Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
What was the crime of which you were convicted? Did you in fact commit those acts?
I would invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
Privacy was very important to Jeffrey Epstein.
Please state your full name.
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands. Same answer.
Were solicited for prostitution in Paris?
Same answer.
Have you ever solicited a minor for prostitution anywhere at any time?
Again, I'm going to assert my right. What'd you study? Physics.
Mr. Epstein built little cabanas and beach houses all across the island.
66 different days that he violated his probation. He would go to the airport, jump in his helicopter, who knows where he went.
Yes, I report back to jail at 8 p.m.
Every single day?
Yes, sir.
Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis?
No, in fact, the Supreme Court recently said that the Fifth Amendment right is there to protect the innocent. So, that's the way I'd like to answer that.
Talk about Jane Doe 102, Virginia Roberts.
What's the last name? How's it spelled?
Do you know Virginia Roberts?
So she's again who?
Prosecuted for these crimes, isn't that right?
Objection, argumentative, harassing, and calls for a legal conclusion.
Can you spell it? Can you spell it for me, please?
There you go. Nice intro there.
Thank you, Rye. I updated it to actually add you in it, but it didn't add. But next episode we'll definitely get your voiceover in the intro. But I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, and a happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I'm joined by one of my favorite interviewees, Ryan Dawson, my big bro, my Native American brother, who is in Japan right now. He's definitely a guy I learned from in this space. I consider him to be a mentor from afar over in the East there. He's nice and safe away from the clutches of the U.S. regime, as it were. And we got a special episode of the Epstein Files here on Thanksgiving. The last time Ryan and I chatted was actually on the 4th of July. On Independence Day of our country. Ryan's a Southern boy, and I'm actually in the South right now. I'm broadcasting from South Carolina, which is great. I just had a great Southern Thanksgiving, thanks to my friend Peaches, and I'm here at my friend Wes's house, and I want to thank Ryan for joining us. I hope I don't have to wait until Christmas to talk to you next time, Ryan.
You know, the real Thanksgiving, like the one that fits with the story version you heard, was in North Carolina. The story version is false because the original Thanksgiving was a state holiday in Massachusetts celebrating the Mystic River Massacre of over 700 Native Americans. But it evolved over time. Post-Civil War, they needed a unity story, brotherly love, people get together. So they invented this story of the colonists and the Indians sharing food. That didn't happen in Virginia or Massachusetts with either one of those colonies, with the Puritans or with Jamestown. They actually did have a feast where they poisoned the Indians and chopped heads off under the flag of truce. That happened. But prior to all of that, there was something like a series of feasts with the Croatoan Indians with Richard Grenville and Sir Walter Raleigh's colony, although Raleigh wasn't there. That did happen, and they got along just fine for a couple of years in the 1590s. But yep, so if there should be a Thanksgiving, once we have that history uncovered, we say, you know what, this was the Thanksgiving, and they would do that during harvest. Everybody shared. It makes sense. If you don't have refrigeration and you kill a deer or something, what else are you gonna do but share it? You can't eat all of it, right? So,
Right.
but yeah, and that's what they ate on that time too. It wasn't turkey; it was venison.
And I love venison. I've actually killed 4 deers, believe it or not, people. And very thankful to Mother Earth for providing that venison. Hunting is quite a tradition in my family. But as far as the first Thanksgiving, you said it was actually not quite as cordial as we are led to believe. You said it was a bit of a massacre, or
All right, so Thanksgiving changed 3 times. It was a state holiday celebrating a series of massacres, the Mystic River Massacre, where they set longhouses on fire, and then whoever ran out, they ran them through with a sword. That was the original Thanksgivings, and I remember Washington actually wrote and said you have too many holidays consolidated into one, but it was to celebrate a Christian victory over the Indians. They're just murdering civilians. That was sort of forgotten, and it was still a state holiday, just in one state. Later, post-Lincoln, they would make a national holiday, and they didn't mention the Mystery Massacre. They tried to tell a story about pilgrims and Indians sharing a meal together. And it even got twisted so much that the pilgrims gave the Indians food, which definitely didn't happen, because in Jamestown, they starved to death. It was totally the other way around. The only reason they survived at all was from the charity of Native Americans. So that never happened. And then there was an incident where Bacon, different from the Francis Bacon, the philosopher, but it was Bacon's Rebellion, where they went around setting tobacco farms on fire of other poor white people so that they could get a better price for their own. And he wanted to wage war on the Indians, and the governor didn't. So he actually kidnapped the governor's children. So this whole ordeal, and they ended up having a feast and invited the Indians to dinner, and then poisoned the wine and attacked them. And so it was never peaceful there. But prior to all of that, in the original colonies that became the Lost Colony in the Carolinas, they got along fine for about 2.5 years and shared meals and probably the closest thing to something like a Thanksgiving. Because today, the third time it got switched was it just got commercialized. So they switched the date to space it from Christmas, all for consumers reasons. And it's kind of forgotten. You have a turkey and cranberry and potatoes and all, and I don't think people even realize those are all native foods. Now the whole world has them now, but the Europeans never had potato. They never had cranberries. They didn't have turkeys, or all the things that you eat at Thanksgiving. So,
well, we got
or corn.
Here, Ryan, you and I. So we gotta represent for the natives.
Well, I represent all lost history that I can find. But when people are like, "Oh, you're celebrating Thanksgiving, it's a massacre Indians," like, no, it's not. It's a family time, and you know it. And it's a good story, and it doesn't matter if it's a myth. It's a good myth. The same with other holidays, so it's fine. But I want people to remember that you traditionally are eating indigenous foods to the Americas, corn and potatoes, and cornbread is the hybrid. It's because bread is European. Or Old World. I don't know if it's European. I'm not sure everyone had bread, but they didn't have the yeast to make the bread rise in the New World. So bread and corn together is a nice fusion of cultures, and sort of the staple thing. Everyone has cornbread on Thanksgiving, I think. Pumpkin pie is a nice fusion too, because pumpkins are indigenous to the New World. Pie with if you're putting sugar and whatnot in it is a nice fusion. So.
Yeah, and I got a nice piece of pumpkin pie waiting for me after our chat, but no rush on that.
It's delicious. We should make it year round. People usually just have it around Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm like, man, you can bust out a pumpkin pie anytime.
Yeah, it's true.
My 2-year-old had his first piece yesterday. We had a miniature Thanksgiving here, and It was a little too spicy for him, but he liked the whipped cream that was on the top. So
That was with native Japanese man, or
it was with everybody. It was with mostly Japanese, I suppose, and other expats from America and Canada mostly. But we had some Australians. People they don't have Thanksgiving, so it was their first one. So
oh wow,
pretty cool.
that's fantastic.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I had
Thanksgiving.
a nice dad joke in there. The word for turkey is shichimencho, and the word for bird is tori or tori. And there's an expression, sonotori, it's like that's right or that's correct or something. But sono also means this, like that, this. And so I asked them,
Right.
I'll say it in English, what is this? Like, kori wa nan desu ka? And they're like, shichimencho. And I'm like, sonotori. Like, oh, that's right. And I'm also saying this is a bird.
So we must.
It worked.
Shashiburi sensei Ryan.
Shashiburi. I got a series of revenge dad jokes after that from all the dads there. And I was like, man.
It was a dad joke competition.
It was. We cleared the room. The guy told me a story about a man and his son. His son was of the right age, became a father. He just had a baby. So the other guy became a grandfather. And he goes, son, I got something to give you. I'm going to give you the book. He's like, what do you mean? And then he hands him over a book, and it's titled "The Book of Dad Jokes." He's like, and the son says, "Oh, I'm honored," and the father says, "Hi, honored. I'm Dad."
There you go. And Ryan is a dad, and his kids are doing great. I was just talking to him about his family before we went live, and his family is doing fantastic, which we're glad to hear because the deep state.
My oldest son is my eldest son
Dawson.
is still trolling Andy Warski because Andy cannot beat his Mario Maker stage, and he beat some of them. And these are stages that are like only 2 out of thousands can clear the stage, and Andy was one of the guys, so he's pretty good at the game. But we got one stage that he just can't get through, and my son is not letting him forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a video game, Ryan? Or
so Mario Maker is like you can design a stage from any of the Mario games, and then people online can try and play it and beat your course.
Oh, okay.
And so this guy Andy Warski was he was an internet personality, and then he's had a lot of jobs. He was like an OnlyFans appraiser. What a job, right? He just like go and rank them. He quit that, and he was like he did streams of gaming, new games and stuff. He's pretty good at any kind of game. And one day, and I never introduced him to my son. My son found him on his own because he was looking at the new Spider-Man game or something. And then I was like, oh, I know that guy. He's like, you got to get him to play my Mario Maker stages. So I did. And he beat all the stages. So then we made him harder. And Andy's been ducking the challenge. So just getting that in there. I hope he's watching.
Yeah.
He has some convoluted story. He's like, oh, I lost my Wii. I left it in a car and I sold it and blah, blah. I was like, that's a pretty long way of saying you're scared.
Was Halo 3, is that too past your time, or are you used to playing video games when Halo came out?
Oh no, I tapped out at like Final Fantasy X. I haven't played any games since like 2005.
Okay, so you're on the PlayStation. You're all PlayStation then.
I wasn't into first person shooter games because I watched Halo, my roommate played that, and it was dumb because the enemies are going to do the same thing every time. So you just memorize your mistake and correct it. And if you play long enough, you are going to win. I don't like games like that. I like games that have a good story or like are extremely difficult. Otherwise, meh. I was a game when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. I was a hardcore gamer. I beat Zelda without getting the wooden sword in 0 tries. I did. I was one of the first people to do that, and I won like tournaments in Street Fighter 2, and I was supposed to. They were gonna fly me to like California. I'm like, I'm not doing that. It's not that important. But I used to destroy people in those games, and then in college, I just didn't have time, and and the game started to suck, so I just went into it.
Yeah, Halo 3 for me was it peaked. It was just the perfect time. Middle school is kind of like your video game prime time, right? So to speak.
Hmm.
That's when Halo 3 came out, and that was just it was so much fun playing with everybody. Playing with friends. There's such a social aspect to it that was just really enjoyable. And not to mention, I was very good. I have to say. There's this guy. His name was still remember. His name was Red Bull Sniper. Red Bull Sniper, and he posts YouTube videos. And I was big into basketball then. So my my gamer tag was B-ball point guard. Very creative. No, very uncreative. And he would get so mad at me because I was the only one who could end his kill streaks during the. He would do like just open pub matches, against anybody. He'd be like anybody, lone wolves, free for all, and I was the only one who could take him down. But he would still, take first. But let's get into Mr. Epstein here, Ryan, before we get into the election, because this is a special episode of the Epstein Files, and I would consider Ryan to be the man, the source on Jeffrey Epstein. You were investigating him over a decade ago.
14 years now.
Yeah, I was playing Halo 3 during that time, so I was, Epstein was not even close to my mind. And Ghislaine Maxwell, we talked about that when we spoke on the 4th of July.
Little good news about her. According to her lawyers, they're waking her up every 15 minutes to make sure she's breathing, like with a flashlight.
Oh, fantastic.
I doubt that's true. It's probably every hour because these people can't speak without exaggerating. But I'm glad she's getting harassed in prison. They're going to make her get to trial in July.
Yeah.
July 12th, everyone. If she
amazing.
lives, that's when the trial is.
So you do... Let's start off with the most basics. You do believe she is, in fact, in custody?
Yes, she's in custody. Some of her victims were at the hearing, so they saw her zoomed up there. And, people are like, I don't see him. It's weird to me. They don't think she's in custody, and they think Epstein is still alive. Like, he's definitely dead, and she's definitely in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in custody.
Conspiracy theorists are the ones that are saying that Epstein's alive, and I know some people have said that, but I mean, it's when you think about it practically, it just makes more sense to whack him, But the Ghislaine thing,
he's completely worthless, and he has too much heat on him. There's no reason to allow him to live. But what they do, and I notice these types, is the quickest way to ruin something is to champion nonsense while pretending to be on the same side, right? And what they did is they said Epstein's still alive and he's in Israel. So what they're trying to do is anyone that brings up the Israeli portion of Epstein, which is very real, looks like a kook, because the ones that are talking about the loudest are the ones saying, oh, he's still alive and he's in Israel, right? And so all the criticism of Israel is being said by these people that also say, they put colonies of kids on Mars or whatever, right? And that is to,
I know who you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Who denied it when I interviewed him? He's like, I didn't say that. I'm like, yes, you did. It's on tape. Whatever.
I saw that interview, and I do like his stuff. I have to say, I really do. But he is still an ex-spook,
There's no such thing as ex. He's a spook. The kook movement comes in. They're like, do you think he's still alive? I'm like, yes, he is. I'm not having any of that. I didn't say they were putting colonies on Mars. Like, yes, you did. Like, you out-Jonesed Jones, right? Even Alex Jones was like, well, what? That guy has no filter. But apparently there's a line on like colonizing a planet. You can't do that. Even if there was some reason to do that, we don't have the ability to get to Mars, much less live on it. Like, and there's no purpose in that. But they say these outrageous things, or someone says
we got to the moon, Ryan?
Yes, but that's very different than Mars.
Yeah. Okay.
And you definitely can't live on Mars. There's no atmosphere. It's got the wrong gravity. There's like 6 zillion ways to instantly die. There's no magnetic core, so you'd be just getting solar radiation like instantly. A robot could stay there for a while, but a person, no way. not especially kids. You'd implode. I mean, you'd freeze. They're so dumb.
What is let's not spend too much time on kids on Mars, but what's the purpose? What would be the end goal of stating something as absurd as that?
Well, they do that so that it derails legitimate criticism of the Israeli role. And they did the same thing with 9/11. Israel has a role in 9/11, but the people saying it either say a bunch of anti-Semitic crap with it, so that discredits it, or they go on into holograms or whatever, you know. The ridiculous is always attached to Israel, which lets you know who's actually putting the ridiculous out, because it's always associated with that to discredit people. You know, if you get like a bunch of white nationalists saying things bad about Israel, then it makes others who just don't want to colonize Palestine and so on associated with them. They do the same thing with the Confederate flag. There'll be some stupid ass neo-Nazi with a Confederate flag next to his Nazi flag, which is stupid because the South fought the Nazis too. Did you know that in World War II, the stars and bars were flying, and into Korean War? It's not that far removed.
Can you expound on that, Ryan? I actually don't know.
Yeah, so there were units from the old South. It's like my grandparents, my great grandparents, I met right when I was a kid. My great granddad's father was in the Civil War, right? And my great grandfather was in World War I. My grandfather was in World War II and the Korean War. And they had the stars and bars on the tank. And you can check it out. Like, go look up for the Confederate flag, World War I, Confederate flag, World War II. They still had that sense of state pride and unity even then. Because it was always this Confederate States of America. They weren't being anti-American. They just didn't like the mercantile North. They considered like their secession, like, well, we're America, you're not. Like, we're staying in our own union. We're just separating ourselves from you guys, because Southern states were there first, right? Virginia's older than any of the rest of them. Anyway, that was they fought against the Nazis, and there's this thread though of trying to paint the South as, you know, because Southern states had slaves, ignoring the fact that so did 5 northern states, and ignoring the fact they enslaved Chinese after the war, but that the motivation of the war was racism or something. Also ignoring that even where slaves were free, they still had racial segregation in the entire country. Like, everybody was racist in the 1860s, but these neo-Nazi groups trying to attach themselves and throw up a Confederate flag. I'm like, you are so ignorant. You don't know what that means at all. This has nothing to do with fascist party in Germany, right? But they put it in there anyway because they want to pollute. And they know whatever they do, it'll destroy. And the Confederate flag is a symbol of defiance. And the U.S. government hates it. It's what Antifa does, right? They went right after the Confederate statues and stuff because it's a symbol of defiance. But they got all these corporate sponsors, you know, when you don't have to dig very deep to see Black Lives Matter and Antifa are getting corporate support. The mass media is totally on their side. Biden said they're just an idea, man. And yet they're burning cities down, right? And looting stores and just committing acts of violence, all under the name of just yelling racist. That justifies whatever I want to do. And the people they're attacking aren't racist, you know, and the statues they're attacking are nothing. They're made of stone.
Yeah.
And the people that honor those statues aren't racist.
It's part of our history too, Ryan. And I think that.
Yeah. And they went after Lincoln, and he was a racist, but that ain't why people have Lincoln statues. And they went after Jefferson, you know, who ended the transatlantic slave trade and nearly ended slavery in Virginia. He lost by 1 vote. It's an excuse, right? It just sounds better than admitting they're a bunch of Marxists that hate the United States.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. I was reading actually this article today from the New York Times about Imran Awan, the Pakistani spy ring leader of the basically the encrypted network within the House of Congress and the Senate, and they gave him a bunch of money, and they were saying that the reason the reason that he got investigated in the first place was because he's Muslim. And I couldn't even finish the article, man. Like
That's New York Times. I mean, it's
can't
odd
even-
that they think the U.S. is so anti-Muslim when they're allied with Saudi Arabia and Jordan and so on, like, and the UAE and Bahrain. They don't have a problem when it's Salafists because they're fighting against Israel's enemies, and that's all it's about. Zionism is directing U.S. policy, not Islam or anything else, not even U.S. interests. It's Israeli interests and personal profits for the people they bribe or blackmail, which goes right back to Epstein. That was the blackmail wing of it. He's meeting with Israeli prime ministers. They're in his black book, right? Ehud Barak is sleeping with some of his kidnapped children. And Ehud Barak is a part of the liberal party in Israel. And that wing, that's Obama, Biden, all the Clintons. They're all on that side. Everyone's always pro-Israel. But Trump and the Kushners, Rupert Murdoch from Fox, they're more the conservative Labor Party, or Likudnik Party, whereas Clinton and them are more the Labor Party. And it's just liberal and conservative Zionism. There's no anti-Zionism. There's never been a presidential candidate that actually won a primary who opposed Zionism.
Yeah, and did you see who Biden?
Except for Ron Paul. He won the Virgin Islands, and he was not a Zionist. So I guess one guy.
No, yeah, I know you like Ron Paul. I actually really like Ron Paul as well. But did you see who Biden made his first cabinet member?
Cheney was in there, and it was a list of terrible people.
John Kerry.
John Kerry. Well, yeah. Well, those two have been doing business together for 30 years, right? So if you look at Biden's Rosemont Seneca, for example, they're always talking about Hunter Biden, but all these boards that Hunter Biden are on, you're going to find Devin Archer and you're going to find Chris Hines. And Chris Hines is a stepson of John Kerry. John Kerry's last name isn't even Kerry. He changed it to sound more Irish so he could win in Boston. He's a Jewish guy. It changed his name. It's fine. You want to change the name, but be honest about it. But these people are diehard loyalists to Israel, and they set up fronts essentially in Ukraine, Romania, China. They defrauded. Do you know about the Native American bond scheme? Because that's why Devin Archer's in jail.
Yeah. Actually, I've been covering that with George Webb. That was the Lakota Sioux, right? Lakota Sioux.
Yeah, it was Sioux Lakota or Lakota Sioux, and they swindled them.
Give us some expound on that
style. Well, actually, I have a film called Corn Pop's Revenge. Thought that was a funny title.
I actually watched it. I watched it.
The end of that goes all into that with screenshots and whatnot. But yeah, they're supposed to be. They weren't investing them where they said they were, and they were spending money they didn't have yet. And it just went through a series of banks and ended up in a personal account in Florida. It's pretty easy to catch. They just thought, oh, these natives won't. I don't know. They just didn't think they'd get caught. They did. Devin Archer's going to prison, and that's why he's flipping on Hunter. And we're talking about over $1 billion. This is an enormous amount of money. Jack Abramoff did the same thing.
Devin's in protective custody right now. They moved him last month.
Mm-hmm. Been nice if that had all come out before the election. Oh wait, it did. It just wasn't on TV.
Well, we covered it, but our channel got axed. I don't know if you saw that, Ryan. We have this neighborhood news channel, and when we were in, like I said, I was telling you before we went live today, we're up in Michigan, and I was telling you also before we went live, we were catching up a bit. The only person who's more censored than George Webb is you, Ryan, and
old school.
went on that channel, and we got axed after a couple weeks. We're talking about Bobby Lewinsky and Archer.
Can't do it. BitChute only, really. I mean, it's unbelievable. But they were censoring. I mean, feel honored, I guess. But Kayleigh McEnany got suspended on Twitter. New York Post got suspended, and their tweet was blocked.
I saw that. That's insane.
They opened about 20 prominent YouTubers, all of whom had over 100,000 followers each, and
You
it was
saw
like
my
800
you saw my
million views.
video. I know you commented on it. You're like, bitch shooter broke. You saw my I did a Spider-Man video with all the YouTubers that got axed. I added you even though you're still on YouTube. The only reason you're still on there
Yeah,
is
I
you
had it
literally
4 times, and I physically threatened them basically. So
you literally went to Ireland. That was the only reason you're still on YouTube.
yeah, I'll go ham if I lose it. I got it. I'll go ahead and take the jail time. Like, I'm not putting up with this. And they don't listen to anything else. They force us to act like this. You know, it's like,
Of course.
why are you doing this? Where's the due process of law? I hope if Trump is able to flip these states, that he will go after big tech, because if we don't kill it now, we're looking at the dystopian techocracy that Ted Kaczynski warned us about.
Yeah.
It won't be stoppable once it gets too big. Ted Cruz is always shaking his finger, but they don't do anything. Right? Just enforce antitrust laws or get rid of their 230 privileges. Especially Twitter. It is so clear that they are not a platform, that they are editorializing and they're a publisher. They just censor who they feel like. It has nothing to do with their rules. The rules are subjective, so they can be like, hate speech, but it's not hate speech. Yeah, but I didn't like what you said, so I'm just going to call it hate speech. And you're gone. And that's what they do. And Google does the same thing. Facebook does the same thing. But usually Facebook's temporary. It's 30-day bans, usually. Whereas the rest are permanent life. You know, you cannot argue. Trust and safety decided. You're not allowed to speak to them. They don't have to provide any evidence. I mean, that's a nightmare. And I would argue it's unconstitutional because that is impeding on your free speech. Even if it was hate speech is speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. Like, let them say it, and then argue with them. You don't push these people underground. If they don't have any dialogue, what's going to change their mind?
It's going to fester then.
It's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And they feel like, aha, they are scared to talk to me. I must be right.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is a huge problem that I don't know. It just seems like that, the tech and I know your book, The Separation of Business and State. I was telling you before the chat. Unfortunately, I had to leave as I'm on the road here. I left all my books up in Michigan, and I'm probably going to order a new one. Actually, I'll buy a new one, and I would encourage anyone to do the same. Ryan wrote Separation of Business and State.
I think I had that behind. Yeah, right there.
There it is.
Yeah. Looks like the Monopoly guy on the charge with the money bag.
Well, that's what's going on, and especially when you look at the Dominion, voting system. It's like our voting, our whole election has been privatized. Isn't
it funny that their little minion of Dominion, his name is Eric Coomer.
Coomer.
His last name is Coomer. It's like the Sims controllers are messing with us. He said Trump's not going to effing get elected. I made sure of that.
Yeah. Wow.
They feel like, I can boast about it. Press won't say anything. And they're right. Press hasn't said anything. It's been Newsmax, OAN News, and Right Side Broadcasting, and a bunch of independent influencers. Nothing from CNN, Fox.
I saw Right Side when I was in Washington, D.C. I was covering the march. I didn't know who Right Side was, so I called them mainstream, and I think they got a little offended there.
Oh, I bet. Well, now you know.
Well, they got to be behind the gate, and I didn't. I was like, "Who are these guys? Must be mainstream. They get to behind the
No, that was started as a real grassroots movement, not AstroTurf. That was real grassroots.
Wow.
Like one guy used to go film on his own, place to place, and it got built up and sponsored. And they're the only one that would show the president's crowds. Now it's a conservative group, and they admit they're a conservative group. CNN still acts like it's neutral news, but it's definitely liberal as it can be, right? Or is this? I shouldn't even call it liberal. They're just establishment. It just happens to be a liberal running against Trump right now. But the rhinos and neocons are no different. They're all establishment. They're all pro-war. But some of the far leftists, I mean, with birthday abortions and gun grabbing and all, they just add a little extra sauce of terrible onto what was already terrible with their foreign intervention. But people got to remember, Obama and Biden invaded Libya and Syria and Mali and Somalia and continued the war in Afghanistan, made it bigger than it ever was, stayed in Iraq as long as possible, and then switched to mercenaries. You know, they're warmongering presidents. And I'm like, this is what you got. You voted for the guy that says it's okay to kill a baby in the 9th month of pregnancy. You're voting for the people that they want to take your guns away, buyback program immediately. Open borders, just, you know, let's just destroy America, right? That's what you voted for.
In Philadelphia, Ryan, I think it was in the beginning of the summer, they were putting up posters in like tweets and this marketing campaign for people to voluntarily turn in their firearms in Philadelphia. Like it was a good thing, like they were doing good for humanity for turning in their firearms. It's just
why do they need you to give away your gun? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because this leftist horde came in burning buildings, and you had someone like Kyle Rittenhouse put 3 of them down, 2 of them permanently, who attacked him because he had a gun.
Okay,
and the next day,
let's talk about Kyle.
There were no riots.
Let's talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, because I think, like, what are your thoughts on him? Because, what are your thoughts of Kyle Rittenhouse? Wisconsin, my home state.
I think he did what he had to do. They were attacking him, and it's on film. The rapist of 5-year-olds, Rosenbaum, who'd been in jail for 13 years, was chasing him, was at arm's length away. So he shot him, but not before people were shooting at Kyle and shooting in the air. So he's hearing gunshots, and he's being chased. This lunatic, pedophile, rapist. They didn't bring up his background, by the way. Joseph Rosenbaum grabs him. I brought it up, yeah. And he shoots him. Okay, and then he called for help afterward. And he's moving along because they're saying get him, and they're firing guns in the air. And a guy comes and, after Kyle fell down, hits him with a skateboard, which could kill you if you hit somebody in the head with a skateboard, was swinging it again and grabbing his gun while he's on the ground. So from a sitting position, he shot that guy. Well, that guy was attacking him. Don't attack people who are holding guns. Shouldn't attack people who aren't holding guns. You shouldn't just swing skateboards at people. So they put him down. That guy was also fond of choking women and so on in his past, and he had a record. There are 2 felons that he shot. And then the third guy comes running up onto him with a pistol in his hand, which he wasn't supposed to have because he's already on probation for breaking and entering and so on. So he's illegally possessing a gun, and Kyle shot him in the arm, literally disarmed him. Good riddance. And then he just calmly walked back and turned himself in.
Do you don't think it was an operation, though?
No. There are people like that, just Boy Scout types. They're like, I'm going to defend these businesses. And he's lucky he didn't die.
I agree. I mean, you know he's from Illinois, right? He's not from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know. But so what? He's like the biggest city next to where he lives is Kenosha. He'd been there all the time. Been there the day before, cleaning up businesses and wiping up graffiti and so on. So, and he had a lot of friends there, and he's with a group. And he brought a medical kit. And they're like, we're going to help people if they get injured, and we're going to protect these businesses. So they're so naive. They're thinking, okay, if you want to peacefully protest, go ahead. But if you get out of line, we got protection. And of course, the mob that went there had no intention of peacefully protesting. They set a whole car lot on fire. They're going street by street burning businesses. And what started the confrontation with Rosenbaum was Kyle said, get off the cars. Like somebody manned up and stood up to this mob and was like, you can't do that. And they got pissed at him, like, why won't you let us break these cars? Right? Yeah. And they chased him around, and they had their own guns, shot at him. We didn't know that for a while. Shot in the air is in the video, but Rosenbaum was also shot in the back, and he may have been shot by another Antifa person, and that'll come out. But I think there should be more Kyle Rittenhouses, and then we wouldn't have Antifa. You cannot go around burning businesses and homes on fire. They set a home on fire in Richmond that had children in it and then tried to block the fire department from reaching the fire.
Oh my goodness.
Because they want to rip down statues.
Well, I think I agree with you. I think if there was more Rittenhousers, there would be less Antifa, but I do think that there's a very high probability of it being an operation when you look at the fact that he walked towards law enforcement armed after killing someone and they didn't do anything to him. And moreover, I mean, again, like legally, completely justified, I think, for sure, legally completely justified. But at the same time, it's like, that's kind of like me going to Chicago, getting a gun from my friend, Illinois firearm, completely legal, and just kind of marching around downtown Chicago, which, again, is legally justified, but it's just a little...
Well, it's after several days of rioting and looting before you do that, though. You didn't just go there. They'd already been rioting and looting for days. Then he went there and said, like, we're going to put an end to this. Because they'd already seen how they behaved. They'd already been burned car lots and things already. And they were there to do it more. And so any patriots from whatever state decided to gather there and said, you're not going to mess with these businesses. You can protest police abuse or whatever. As far as the cops not doing anything, that doesn't surprise me. Like, well, they usually don't do anything. Especially if you're holding a gun. If he didn't have a gun, they probably would have shot him. You know, if he'd stabbed somebody or something, they would have been like, get on the ground. And then, stop resisting and shoot him. But if you're walking around with an AK or AR-15, I think he had, whatever, they're not going to escalate. You know, he put his hands up. He had his gun down. He walked there.
Why do you think that is, Ryan?
Because cops serve the state, not you, and they don't care. When they do violence to somebody, it's because they enjoy it or because that person's messing with the state. So when Antifa was in Portland burning buildings, the cops were nowhere to be found. As soon as they hit a courthouse, well, then there's a wall, and because that's the government, right? These are government thugs. You say, oh, protect and serve. Yeah, the state, not you.
They're not
right?
constitutionally
Cops are not on your side.
Required to protect us.
No, they protect themselves, and they're not going to shoot a citizen holding a gun who's part of a militia because you're just asking for it. They're not going to risk their life over that. They'll come in and comply, put his hands up, fine. They don't care. Like, look at all the rioters that were breaking things, and they didn't do anything about that either.
So,
right?
So you think being armed has that much of an effect, such that the police are like, okay, like
absolutely,
really,
yeah,
okay.
Because if they're scared, you pointed at them, whatever, they'll shoot at you. They'll empty their clips.
Sure.
But if you're openly walking around with like a 2-armed gun at a riot, you got to have the whole context. Like, lots of people walking around with guns. They're not going to escalate it. They're in their cars with a floodlight, Nobody, there's a wall between them and him, and they're not going to do anything. They didn't even say anything on the bullhorn. They just ignored him. And like, all right, this guy's coming to turn himself in. But there were shots going off, pop, pop, pop all night. Even after Kyle shot people, there were more shots. You could hear him in the background, da-da-da-da-da, going on somewhere, right? This is just a wild anarchist movement. Shooting wildly. They're shooting property. They're shooting in the air. They were shooting at Kyle. So those police aren't going to do anything. Even when there's a school shooter or something, all they do is surround the building and wait for him to kill himself. There hasn't been one incident where they like broke down the door and shot the shooter ever. It's always they hide until the guy kills himself. That's it. Or turns himself in. I think the Batman shooter just came out with his hands up or whatever. There's never been a shootout. That's on movies, right? That doesn't happen in real life. Right. The one time there was a shootout was, I think it was in Los Angeles or San Francisco. It was in California. 2 guys in body armor, and they kept the entire, it was LA. They kept the entire LAPD at bay for like 45 minutes because they would only shoot from a distance and it wouldn't go through the armor. They didn't want to engage where they could be seen, where the guys would shoot back. So these guys robbed the bank, had hostages, and they're just walking around like monsters. And there were helicopters and everything, and all the police surrounded them. But nobody would engage, right? They just follow them around. until they run out of ammo, and then one guy shot himself. One was finally taken down, but it was like 2 guys versus the entire police department. Right? They're not all these cop and lawyer shows that are like the heroic police. They're gonna kick in the door and flip, roll on the floor and dodge, and there's nothing like that going on. They eat donuts and give traffic tickets. The road pirates. They're like just a guy, mostly dealing with stupid domestic abuse things from drunks and issuing traffic tickets and not much else going on. And when there is a murder or whatever, they come after it happened, ask what they're wearing, whatever, and okay, we'll be looking out for them. Most times unsolved. When the crimes get solved, it's solved by the victims and the families themselves. They figure out who did it, right? And they tell them. Police are there to protect the state. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all. They didn't do anything. Well, look at the whole riot was happening for days. They didn't do anything about any of that violence. People setting things on fire and shooting guns and using baseball bats. They did not protect one piece of property. They didn't make a single arrest for all those days. So you're talking about a bunch of wimps. Like we're in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Nothing happens here. I'll join the police, get a salary, because probably you never have to do anything. Not really. Just traffic.
Do you know about
and stuff.
the Michael Bell shooting in it was the early 2000s? Do you know about that?
Early 2000s.
He was a white guy, actually, a white male, young white male. I think he was 24, 25. His dad is very much an activist for him, but I don't know what the deal was, but cops showed up as he arrived at his parents' house, and it was just a cold blood execution, right to the head, pistol, and no justice whatsoever. I think the guy who shot him was a Latino cop. I have a video of it on my channel, and I'm editing it into a new video. But it's. And that's a point I want to make too.
There was Duncan Lemp, and there are so many examples of. I take race out of it because I really don't think it's almost never racism. It's just cops. It's
power. It's power.
Yeah, it's a power thing. And even with George Floyd, you had 3 different ethnicities arresting him. Didn't matter, and there's no evidence of racism. Just power tripping cops. He probably died of a fentanyl overdose because he tried to take it all so he wouldn't get caught with it. But you still shouldn't be sitting on someone for 9 minutes or almost 9 minutes.
And I saw some Russian guys trying to prove that you can't kill someone like that. And you're a jiu-jitsu master, literally, Ryan. You can easily kill someone by cutting off the carotid artery.
You could. He was still talking and stuff, but the guy, if he's on drugs, which he was, because it's in his toxology, and he swallowed all that fentanyl, and you're pinned down on your chest like that, you can have a heart attack.
Of course.
And hey, this guy might be on drugs. This could be dangerous. Why am I sitting here like this? He's already handcuffed.
Yeah.
Just sit him up and talk him down, de-escalate. He's not going anywhere. Like, there's no reason to pin him on the asphalt like that. So that's bad, but it doesn't make it racist, is the point. Like, he's just a dick to everybody, right? And they had arrested him like 500 times.
Operation, Ryan? Because I saw that
a media operation. Yeah, I think so, because you look at the weeks prior to George Floyd, there was that incident in Georgia where somebody's accused of robbing houses, and he tried to run around a truck with 2 citizens, and then he juked and grabbed the guy's gun, and they wrestled with it for a second, and he shot him. Now, I feel like if someone's grabbing your gun, you could shoot him because you don't want them to take it from you and shoot you, but that's starting the story in the middle. They never should have made a roadblock and tried to arrest the guy themselves. They weren't police or anything. They were no business doing that, but whatever. It happened to be a black guy and 2 white guys, so they tried to make it a racial issue when it wasn't, and it didn't really work. And then the real kicker was the birdwatcher Karen thing in New York, where some white lady called the police on some black guy who really was watching birds. That sounds like, oh, I'm just watching birds. That's like, oh, yeah, right, buddy. But he was in a bird watching documentary the year before, so it's just a rare incident where the guy really wasn't a peeping Tom or whatever. He really was just bird watching. And the woman lost her shit, and she shouldn't have. But they made that into a race thing. Like with all the news going on, probably other murders in New York that day, right? It was this stupid story about a black bird watcher and a white woman they were calling Karen, right?
Yeah.
And you could tell they were trying to create another Rodney King. They're trying to like, let's just talk about race. Every single arrest anywhere in the country, anytime somebody calls the police and it's a white and black, we're going to hound on it until we get what we wanted. And then they got George Floyd. But see, they were just going case by case by case, trying to make everything about race, trying to create an incident so they could get people to chimp out. And they did. And the people breaking stuff on behalf of George Floyd, I mean, even George Floyd's own family was like, don't do that. Don't behave that way. He did. But it wasn't really about George Floyd. It's just something to say. These people just wanted to loot and steal and hate America, and they want to tear it all down. And they found a cause.
It's such a problem, Ryan, we have with our country.
It's mostly white kids in Portland doing it, too.
In terms of BLM, yes, for sure. It's mostly white people. And I think it was like 6% of BLM is like black. When you look at like the population, I think it's about 14 or 15% black of the general populace. But when you look at I can't remember who said it, but I brought this up during our Thanksgiving dinner we just had. The raw nature of society can be seen in its prison systems, right? And fortunately, since you and I look very similar, we would be able to talk in prison. But if you looked very white, Ryan, or if you looked very black, I unfortunately would not be able to talk to. They're
segregated, and even the Mexicans further segregate, like within groups. And the guards and stuff encourage that crap, but the gangs really do break down along biology. It's so silly. I think that started probably with the language barrier between Latino versus everyone else, but yeah, it's just black racists, white racists, brown racists. They're all racist. They make gangs. And even if you're not, you got to join one, because if you're not in one, you're toast.
You're gonna die.
So it's like that's how they'd like things to be, and we have to fight against that. And every time people are trying to create racial division, you got to slap that down. Like, look, that is that cop. Even if he was a racist, that's just him. That ain't the whites, right? But there's no evidence. And you'd also have to say that the black cop and the Asian cop were also racist.
Of course.
They weren't. They'd arrested him many times before. They knew who he was. He was a drug addict that pulled a pistol out on a pregnant woman and robbed her. Like, George Floyd's not some hero. That's not a hill I'm going to die on. There are plenty of better examples of purely innocent black people getting killed by the cops than George Floyd.
Of course.
The media picked one intentionally that people could argue about. It's just like Mr. Brown in Missouri. They were saying he made a demon face, whatever. And look at the case of Gardner in New York. He was selling loose cigarettes, and a cop choked him to death with a naked choke. It should definitely kill you. He just sat there on his back and choked him out until he died. And that guy wasn't armed. And he wasn't being violent. His name was Eric Gardner. He was overweight.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
The media's like, oh, he was fat. No, he got choked to death.
Yeah.
By an Italian. They just sat, and even Black Lives Matter, they ignored that because it's not divisive, because that's clearly a clear case. And they went more on to, was it Michael Brown? I guess was his first name? Whatever.
Michael Brown, yep.
Yeah. And that was like, well, they try to grab the cop's gun and blah, blah. They wanted a story that people could argue about on Facebook and stuff. And that was where the juice was and the clicks were. And that's what but Eric Gardner, he just, I don't care if he's selling loose cigarettes or whatever. Like, why the hell would you choke somebody for that long on the ground?
Yeah.
He couldn't get his arms behind his back because he had his knee on him, and you're cutting his air and blood off. And he can't tell you that he can't breathe because you can't talk when you can't breathe.
Yeah, and we've I think we've talked about this before, Ryan. It might have been with somebody else. When you look at, like, you know, the 5 points argument between the Irish and the Italians, you know, in the 19th century, you know, it's like whatever the most recent immigrant group is to United States, in our most recent times, it's more so Latinos, but even more recently, kind of Muslims. They kind of get like the
You
shaft.
start on the bottom, yeah. It's
Yeah.
and they all go through the crucible and eventually assimilate. With the exception of blacks, because that's a special case. They didn't come over; they were brought over.
Right.
And we weren't even desegregated till the 60s. You know, you're talking about people whose grandparents just went to the shittiest school, if any school at all, right? He's starting from way further behind than other groups. Maybe not the Irish. I mean, they were equally dirt poor. They'd also been enslaved at times, but they also took a long time to assimilate. The Irish were just thought of as scum for many generations. Now they're, they had the presidency at one point. So did Africans, but it took a long time, and you can't expect it to change quickly. I'll acknowledge that there has been prejudice, but I would say in 2020, you do the right things and you get a good education, have a good work ethic. It doesn't matter what color you are. If anything, it's an advantage to be a minority because there's lower standards and people are more willing to try to diversify just for the sake of it. Whites and Asians are discriminated against in colleges and sometimes the job market.
I gotta bring this up, Ryan, because I made a live stream a couple months ago now when I was back in Wisconsin, and I was saying that Ryan Dawson is wrong, and I was saying about the topic was systemic racism. So I wanted to bring that up. I do think that I agree with much of what you say, Ryan, but I do think that despite everything we do agree with, that there is a degree of racism within the justice system that is still present, but it's not overwhelming. And I do want to add to that. I think the justice system is actually more sexist than it is racist, because when you look at the stats, I believe that I read it earlier today, white women get a better punishment than men of any race, right? And when you look at how the punishments are given out for the same crimes, women definitely get way less. And black men do get punished a little bit more, but I don't want to make it like I don't want to say black and white, because
it's not by being black, it's because of being poor. Poor people all get punished more than wealthier people. As far as sexism towards men, there is sexism toward men, but when people say sexist and racist, the new definition or whatever is from power or whatever, and so they think sexism can only be towards women or gays. Of course, that's nonsense. It could be sexist to any category. And yeah, women are favored over men in everything, from crime to insurance to whatever. They have advantages. So there is systemic sexism towards males. But what I was writing about is saying, like, if you think you can't do something just because you're a woman, that's bullshit. Like, you've got all the advantages, especially a white woman. You're the most privileged one. You have to try half as hard. Even if you want to be an influencer, if you have titties, you have a major advantage. Right?
Of course.
Like if I was a girl, I'd have millions of followers. If I just said the exact same stuff I'm saying now, they'd be like, she's so smart. You're held to a lower standard. It's just easier on most things. But that's counteracted by the fact that women have a natural disadvantage. Like, just can't walk outside alone in certain places where you and I can. And that's just not their fault. But I don't think it's prejudice toward the sex. I think it's sex. People want women, and so they're more likely to get raped by a relative or just a stranger or whatever than a man. Because more men rape than women.
Completely fair.
But it's not from prejudice. Yeah. It's the opposite. It's because men are stronger than women, so they can rape. So they do. But it's because of opportunity, not because of prejudice. Right. But so they have a disadvantage in certain things in life, but it's not because of systemic racism or sexism. It's just because of the inherent natural differences between men and women. But
Speaking of
they
men,
have it better in the United States than anywhere in the world.
oh
right?
yeah, I mean the American woman is, although not someone I would personally date, the most privileged demographic in the world, I would say. But
Yeah,
let's
take the gold pill.
what's the goal, Bill Ryan?
Some people call it the yellow pill, but I call it the gold pill. It sounds better. That's just like go Asian.
Okay, I got you now. I got you. No,
I'm already
yeah,
on that team, but yeah, there's I would say there is discrimination towards whites by academics and so on. But as far as like statistics saying, well, blacks are getting more stronger punishment for the same crimes, it's really a class thing rather than race. Like actually whites are more likely to be killed, like shot by police. And there are groups that will advocate for you if you're a minority and something like that happens. There's no group that will ever advocate you if that happens and because you're white, because no one wants to look like a Nazi or whatever, right? It's the exact opposite. I mean, there are people just for the act of being racist can go to jail, like the people from RAM. Now, there are lots of black people who are racist, but they're not going to go to jail for being racist. You're not going to go to jail unless you commit a crime. But if you're white, just being racist can get you, you're going to get fired from your job. You're going to get doxxed. You're going to lose everything. And in some cases, you'll go to prison. Even if someone attacks you, you'll be like, well, you don't have self-defense because you're a racist. Or even if you're not, if you're just labeled racist and you're not even racist, like the Proud Boys, they went to prison when Antifa attacked them because they have the image of being racist, right? So that's not privilege. It's like the accusation alone will get you fired, can get you imprisoned, you know, take your money away, take your payment processes away. You can lose your bank just from the accusation of it. If you called a black person racist or any other group, it's just whatever. You know, it's a mean thing to say, but it ends there. Nothing happens, right? To go to jail as a minority, you have to actually do something wrong. And people get stronger sentences because they don't have as good a lawyer or whatever. And it's about money, not color.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's tie this back to Epstein, Ryan. Ghislaine Maxwell, do you think?
Yeah, the real privileged class.
Yeah, right. The most protected class for sure. And likewise, tying the point you just made with regards to money, but
the billionaire class
in custody at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. And if she's alive next July, I will definitely be there in New York.
Hell
and
yeah.
I would love to cover that for you, Ryan. I don't know if you would venture to the U.S. for that, but more than willing.
I would love. I might. Well, I'm gonna have like a less than 1 year old still, and a 3-year-old, and so it'd be hard. But assuming Rona and all has subsided, because there's a vaccine now, miraculously right after the election, then I'd love to travel down there for those salty tears. I want to see it. I want to see it all go down. But if not, you gotta be our man on the ground for ANC report, because
of course
I deserve to be there, but I don't know if I can. It's expensive and there's Rona, but she's gonna flip because that woman can't handle prison. They gave her a computer, but they're gonna take that away.
They got her a computer?
It's a very limited what she can do, but yeah. In a way, I think that's humane. Like when I was in the hospital for just a few days with the eyeball thing, I was about to lose my mind just sitting in bed doing nothing. Like, but it was also like the election was happening, and I'm like, damn, I really, really, really need to be part of this, and couldn't be. But I don't want to go blind, so I sat there. But like, I can't imagine sitting there I'm not in jail. I'm in a hospital. But you still, like, your meals are prepared for you. You can't leave. You're stuck in a room. There's nothing. There was a TV. It's all Japanese variety show. I don't watch that. And I can't see anyway. So I'll just be listening. But it was hell. And I was like, man, yeah, if you're really dumb, I think it wouldn't affect you so much. But you got to at least let somebody read books or do something.
Yeah.
Or it's really... even a criminal, like it's just wrong to just make him sit in a box, like something, or they're gonna go nuts. And we need her to be sane, but I don't think she should have a computer. I think they should let her use books,
Books is fun.
Yeah, and coat them with plastic or whatever. Watch her read them or something. Or I don't know. I think they should be put her in obstacle courses myself. It's your recreation. Everybody get a beanbag.
She has the whole floor to herself, doesn't she? She bought
That
it
was
out.
a rumor. Don't know if that's true. I've seen her sell. It looks pretty bad, but they're constantly checking on her. Once she did have the floor at first, and she was making the other inmates mop the floors 3 times and stuff.
Oh,
but her money's running out, and
yeah.
you can the guards and all like, oh yeah, you want to pay for that? Now what? The more money someone has, the more they need for a bribe. Because it's like, if you already have money and someone offers you 30 grand, 50 grand, 100, I don't care. I don't need that. I already have everything I need. You start crossing that line to where only blackmail will get you. Right. Yeah. And that's why these billionaire class, that's why so many of them are blackmailed, is because bribery is almost impossible. I mean, think about it. If you're a billionaire, what's someone going to give you? Unless it's another billion, which nobody's going to give up, right? They're like, what are you going to give me? Even if your bribe's $1 million, they're like, meh, whatever. I make that on interest. There's nothing they need. But blackmail can make them lose it all.
Right.
However, it's the exact opposite on the poor. They're like, oh, if you don't do this, I'll say this and that. Like, I don't care. Yeah. But if you offer money, they're like, all right, I'm on it. So.
Yeah, it's a very simple point, but it's so true. Like poor people, they don't care too much about their reputation because it's like, whatever, like give them 100 grand.
They got nothing to lose. They're not going to lose the job I already don't have. Or whatever. It's just like, are you going to say things? Well, I'll say something about you too. But you say, 100 grand. They're like, where is he? They'll ready because that'll change their life.
Oh,
but 100 grand is nothing to a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. You need enormous bribes, but the way to move them is to honey trap them, record it. Oh, how would you like this to come out? Because that's the one thing that'll tear them down. But a lot of these guys are willing participants. It's not like they got suckered in by some 17-year-old at a party and they were drinking and she looked 18. That's not what happened. Like, this was organized. They were trafficking these girls from house to house. And I feel like it's the one thing they can't buy, so they do it illegally. You can't pay to have sex with kids legally, so they did it illegally. And you can get enough women, gold diggers or whatever, for a steady supply of Putinani if that's your thing. There's always somebody, but children, like, I don't care if you have money. They don't want to be around you, and that's what they wanted. They wanted it all. And they're raping these kids, and all of them are just, no one told on anyone. That's the most fascinating thing, right? And the Glenn Dubin and his wife were raping kids together. These are billionaires, right? Even when his wife was pregnant, he had sex with Virginia Giuffre. And the fact that she knew when Glenn Dubin's wife was pregnant, she knew who they were. Like, why would some teenager know who the Dubins are? They're not famous athletes or something. They're just billionaire hedge fund. You're not going to know these people. She knew the hotel they'd stayed in because she was there with them. So it's like, you knew the exact day that they stayed in this hotel in Florida and knew how pregnant the wife was and so on because she gave her a massage. He raped her there on the floor of the living room. And that corroborates her story. These aren't just some girls making stuff up about rich people to get money. Like, that is very detailed information that shows she knew everything about him. I don't know other 15-year-olds that know who Leon Black is or whatever randomly, and no way, right?
Yeah. What do you
she
think,
knew, and she
Ryan,
told him back then too.
About Miss Roberts, because I've heard, I know it's kind of a red line for people, I would say. What do you think about Virginia?
I think she scares the shit out of these people. She you have to know, like, okay, this is an abuse victim. And there are people, lawyers and stuff around her that are going to encourage her to go, add this guy or that, say this. And she's going to have to wad her way through that. But clearly she had been abused by Epstein and Maxwell. and a lot of these victims, her accounts are too detailed to be fake. Like, why would you know what the bathroom in his house in the Caribbean looks like unless you were there?
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't some common thing either. It was like mixed gray and black marble and had shower heads here, there, and there. She knew because she was there.
You don't think she has any responsibility to hold to?
Well, not really, because you could say, well, that was really stupid to keep going back to his house and whatnot. But I try to put myself in her shoes. She'd already been abused before Epstein.
Yeah.
And she was trying to have she's
Ron
like,
Victor, I think his name was.
yeah, and supposedly a family member before that too. And
Oh, wow.
so she's working at Mar-a-Lago because her dad was working there too. She gets recruited, seems like it's a nice British lady. Oh yeah, you go to massage school, we'll fly you around the world. You say that to most kids, and they're like, sure. That sounds like a way out. Like, that's why I'm here, is to be around and meet some rich person that'll fix my life. And they molested her and all, but that's what she was used to happening to her. Like, this is what people do to kids, right? Because everybody did it to her. And probably the former rapist that she'd been passed around had tipped him off. Maxwell went and grabbed her. It was Epstein's type, that kind of blonde ballerina look or whatever. And she kind of caved in to like, well, this is my way to move ahead in life or whatever. But a kid shouldn't be making that decision or even been put in that predicament. And then she didn't know how to get out, because it was like, if I don't show up tomorrow, and I've seen this guy with Bill Clinton, with some of those powerful people on earth, I can't fight these people. So she just complied until she figured out a way to go train in Thailand or whatever. She felt far enough away, and then went to Australia, where she was totally away from these people and felt removed, because other girls before her, and actually her later, had told on them and did go to the police, and nothing happened. They just had their lives ruined. And, so she's like, well, I'm just going to take this money and go through with it, and stay at this house and do what I'm told until I can escape. Mm-hmm. And I can see, like, in your head, you'd be like, well, why didn't she this or that? And like, not everyone's a hero, or, not everyone. She's just trying a little kid by herself. She's faced with billionaires with all these contacts. She's seen other people try the other route. It didn't work. Like, he got the sweetheart deal in South Florida, right? They all just get immunity. He gets away with it. He doesn't really go to jail. They're untouchable. So I understand people saying, why didn't you just go to the cops? Haha, right. They did. It didn't matter. He owned the cops. He was using a scientific foundation to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to the police department, which was promptly shut down as soon as he gets out of prison, which he never really went to, but one day a week, and it wasn't even jail. He bought up the women's underwear in the jail, for his work release. He bought up girls' panties. I'm like, why does the jail even sell those? But whatever. That's what he brought with him. And just to let him know, yeah, that's what I'm doing today. Like, and the cops were calling him boss, like my client and things like that. He's a prisoner. He should be in a prison uniform, and he should be in jail. Even if it was only one girl that they said was a prostitute, I'm like, okay, if she's a girl, she's not a prostitute. That's statutory rape anyway. She didn't have consent. I know teenagers fuck each other when they're 15 and 16 and stuff. It's very different, though. Not all of them do that, and this is rape. This is coercion. So if a teenager raped another teenager, it'd be bad. And if an older guy in their 40s did that to a 15-year-old or something, that's disgusting. And it'd be easy to do. It'd be easy for me to go to a high school and seduce whoever I want, because they're dumb. They're kids, but it's sick.
What do you think the age of consent should be?
I think that should be a state issue. I think around 18 or 17, something like that. Not 15. But I feel like rape is rape. I mean, even if they were 18 or 19 and some of the victims were, okay, you're an adult, you still got raped, right? You went there thinking you're going to give somebody a massage for money, which is already kind of sketchy. And then he just flips over with his dick out or whatever. And some of them were like, and ran away. That's still indecent exposure, minimal, right? It's just, it's not, rape comes in degrees. So it's not like you got pinned on the ground and hit in the face and raped, but it's still rape if, when people come and they lure you in under a false pretext and they intimidate you with their wealth and their connections. And they're like, oh, come on. And the girl starts rubbing you and they slowly ease you into it. They kind of groom you. And that's what they did. They slowly escalated it day by day. And then it's like, before they know what happens, they get out of there and like, what the hell happened? What did I do? And it's like, you got played by older people. I mean, they know way more than you do. You think you know everything when you're a teenager. You don't, you know way less than you think you know, even if you don't think you know everything. An older person just has far more experience. And it's the gap is real, and we have laws for a reason like that. I think 2 18-year-olds is fine when they have sex with each other or whatever, but there does need to be a line between children and adults. Because if you don't have that line, that's all that would happen. Adults would prey on kids.
Yeah,
there's too many that are into that, and it isn't right. And even if you don't like those laws, whatever, those are the laws, and they broke them. And by all accounts, like, Virginia definitely didn't want to be having sex with these men that she was told to do it with, but didn't feel like she had a choice because she was scared. Like, if I say no, then what?
Yeah.
Right.
Did you get, well, what do you think of, so you think Japan's is too low then? Because isn't theirs like 13?
No, like Canada's is 13, but that's the federal law. Each province in Canada has its own law. And I think Japan's national was like 13 or something, but I don't think there's a single prefecture under 17. Here it's 18 in Osaka. I think it's 17 in Nara. Yeah, Mie, Wakayama. The age of consent by prefecture is 18, 17, even 19, I think, in Aomori. So it doesn't matter what the national law was, it's obsolete. And it's the same thing in Canada. You can look up the age of consent. Technically, it's 13, but all the provinces have changed that. So and I think even the United States was lower, but by every single state, it's 18. I think in certain state, if you're married, you can have sex, and you can get married in South Carolina at like 16. So whatever, but it's a kind of law that doesn't have a line. It's like you got to put a line somewhere, and it's got to be arbitrary. They're like, well, what about this really mature 17 and a half-year-old? Shut up. There's a fucking line. That's the line. Because we're trying to protect the 12-year-olds, 14-year-old, like, where it clearly is on that side of the line. There's always going to be a gray area around the border. There's some 18-year-olds that aren't mature enough too. Whatever. They're on this. You just got to make a law. That's why it's like, we're not robots, like, this is the law, but you kind of look at it case by case, and you fucking know wrong when you see it, like, you can tell. If somebody's of age, but they're a little mentally handicapped or something, they're not really able to do these things. So, you can tell. So that's the thing like that. I think it's like, that's why we have judges, and you look at it case by case. You don't just have a law and see whether someone broke it or not and decide things. You're supposed to see the case, know the people. And the case with Epstein, they're clearly raping people. They ran out with tears. Some of them never came back. Most of them never came back, but some did. They roped them in. But that's why they targeted people who had nothing going on in their life. Everything was a disaster. And they're like, well, I can be a disaster getting raped by my dad and this and that in the trailer, or I can be a disaster over here getting raped in the mansion. I guess that one, because they got nothing. And they hooked people on drugs on purpose. They groomed these people and promised them, I'm going to pay for your school and da-da-da. And then sometimes they would, and now you're in debt to them. Oh, you've already started? Well, we'll yank you out of there. Then what are you going to do? and they're thinking they have no way of improving their life because they've been told this, they've been broken down, and they feel like it doesn't matter if I go to school or not. It doesn't matter what I know. I don't know anybody. I'm never going to get a real good job, blah, 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 because everyone around them's a failure, right? Probably don't have a father or they don't have a mother, or ones they have are miserable and living in squalor, and they want to get out. And so the allure of the wealth is what gets them to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they're there, they get raped. And they either stay or they don't. And it's also the fear of the power and wealth that makes them comply. And many of them didn't. But when they went to the police, like I said, it didn't work. And they got in more trouble. And some of them are dead. And some people try to adjust to that abuse through drugs. And I mean, look at regular kids that don't have super huge problems that still go into drugs, right? Imagine getting serial raped by billionaires. And it's such an unbelievable story. No one would listen to you. And they just like, okay, heroin. And then they die. It must be, I can't really put myself in their shoes completely. Be like, okay, you're getting raped. You go to the cops. They basically laugh in your face. You see, these people have money. They're the judges. They're the upper class. They run the world. What are you going to do about it? And you're not that educated and you don't know, you're not that bright yourself. That's why they targeted you. You comply.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way to get by. They're intimidated by these people. And like, you can't you say, well, what would I do? Well, they're not you. They're not as educated as you. They don't have the context you have. They just don't see another way out. So I get it.
Yeah. I guess that's probably what's difficult for me because, I don't know, especially as like a young guy, like you see a lot of women being afforded all the authority and none of the responsibility. So that, I think, slants your view in a certain way. Especially when you see, like, the reason I asked about Virginia is because she got very much compensated financially. So that's kind of what I was asking. But you make great points there with regards to her age and where she was, with her own.
I mean, I'm not going to get mad about her becoming wealthy off it. It's like, well, the other side needed to be punished from it. And she still is like trying to help all these other girls. And so what if she gets a lot of money? It's like they're admitting what they did. I mean, she lived with them. She was clearly stolen, essentially.
Well, it seemed like I read her story. It was the Ghislaine Maxwell document release, and it didn't seem like her parents really cared too much about where she was.
Exactly. And she knew they didn't care. So she doesn't really have a place to go because the apartment she had, guess who paid for it? Epstein. So that goes too. You're basically like, you better keep going along or you're just going to be a homeless girl with no education or skill set on the street. So they set it up to where, oh, you can't leave. What are you going to do? You got no credentials. You got nowhere to go. You have no home. Where are you going to sleep tonight? So they're like, oh, I got to keep complying. Like they're stuck, right? The decision to leave, it had to be in the very, very beginning because once you're in, you're in. You can't get out. So I understand the people playing the victims are looking like, well, this girl's rich now or whatever. Not as rich as her victims or her abusers. They hardly, the money they gave her, it didn't affect them at all. They got billions, right? Oh, yeah, here's chump change to us. Yeah. It wasn't real punishment to them.
You think you would give them a little more, like at least 1,000.
Here's $200, whatever. It's and they made them go buy clothing and stuff with it that he wanted, lingerie and whatever. So they weren't even free to spend the money they got because they got taken on shopping trips to get stuff, sex toys and whatever. And that just isn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
But he feels
you
like
think that-
it makes them think in their head, well, he paid me and I accepted it, so I'm partly responsible. That's part of the game of getting them to continue, right?
Right. Do you think that Ghislaine's gonna make it alive, breathing to next to life?
I want to believe that, but you know, to be prudent, it would say no, she won't. But because of all the attention that was on Epstein's death, I feel like we've got a real shot at keeping her alive. Because doing it twice is over the top.
Ah, so obvious.
But
Too obvious.
there's so much to lose.
Rob would say too obvious.
Yeah,
it's too obvious.
There's so much to lose, though. They might do it anyway, because letting her live might even be worse if she starts telling names. What bothers me is we kind of already have the names. You know, that Epstein map of mine, like, I've got all this evidence on these people dead to rights. What are you going to get Maxwell to say it too? You have it from the witnesses. You have it from the abuse victims. Like, why is Jean-Luc Brunel living in France? They know exactly where he is. No subpoena, no justice, nothing. Why? Well, because he's so tight with the authorities over there, obviously.
Yeah.
They all do this. I had a friend, you should have him on your show, Rupert Wilson, who
love to.
He went in prison for 11 months in the UK for uncovering a pedophile ring, and they're like gag ordered him, make him shut up. And this is a guy I've known for a while. He had this kind of comedy show called Hi, It's Rupert, and he got into this story, and he was going to Italy anyway for something. And he's like, all right, on my way back, I'll go to the UK and I'll check this out. And he did. And oh man, it just ruined his life. They all pretended like he threatened them on Facebook. He didn't. But he figured out the cops, the upper brass, like everybody was in on this. And Hampstead outside of London, it was a child prostitution ring. Not prostitution, it's child rape ring. And he helped uncover this, and it was like the authorities there didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
And like, okay, if Prince Andrew's raping kids, it goes all the way up to the royal family.
In the UK, it's even worse.
They might be the worst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they've had a record of child abuse, from chimney sweeps to, the rape rings of today. It's always been a culture of children don't matter. I mean, there's like the German versus the British. The Germans, outside of one particular period of time, always loved their children. They created Christmas, kindergarten, all these, like, spoiled them. Very loving. The Brits, button your upper lip, don't show emotion, mad, if they're not a man by the time they're 6, shove them up the chimney. Like, just all the children's stories are about child abuse. All the little fairy tales and stuff, all the little nursery rhymes are, about killing babies and things. It's disgusting. And the ones that make it in English from wherever are ones with horrible endings to kids. And it's this do it or else sort of attitude to sort of scare people into behaving nonsense. So it's just a culture that's very, very abusive to kids, especially little boys.
Yeah.
Go through some nursery rhymes in your head,
Wow.
right?
What's
Rockabye
that?
baby on the treetop. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. It's about killing a baby. And they sing that to babies. Like, if you don't shut up, I'm going to kill you. Go to sleep. That's the point of that nursery rhyme, of that story. And they're all like that. And it just hasn't changed. They're still abusing kids in Britain. This is a place that had public floggings of young girls. That was like entertainment. They whip somebody and make them cry on the whipping post in front of everybody in the public square. It's a sick culture. They don't do that now, obviously, but they really are mean to kids.
Yeah.
You want something, you spoiled brat. It's just kind of, I think, like the boss comes down on them and they go home and take it out on the kids. Very different from other Europeans and Americans.
You mentioned, just the child abuse thing in Britain, and the new season of The Crown came out, and I think the first episode or second episode,
You should
Lord
look at a British school. The bullying and stuff there is insane. Like
Yeah.
it's just really terrible because the kids that are getting it from their parents go to school and do it to each other. They're so mean to each other, relentlessly, and they just look at it like, oh, toughen up, just. And no, you shouldn't treat kids that way. You should let other kids treat other. But the teachers and stuff, they don't even intercede. They just let it go on.
Yeah.
It's
Well, Lord Mountbatten's death is the first or second episode, and he was, very much into little boys as well.
like Lindsey Graham. Oh, he's not into little boys, but into boys.
Really?
Lindsey Graham. Does anybody know he's not out of the closet? I mean, he doesn't have to tell you.
He's in a teenage.
Everybody in South Carolina seems to know Lindsey's playing on the other side.
Wow, I did not know that. He's into like teenage boys, or
no, he's just no, he's not a pedophile. He's just homosexual. It's just that he's being a hypocrite because he's condemned that in the past, and he's a flaming homosexual, and just won't admit it. And everyone's around him, but like if Lindsey ever came out, the everyone would just be like, "We knew." Like, that's all they'd say. I had a cousin that came out, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm a lesbian." And we're like, "We know." She thought the family would be shocked. We were like, "I thought so," Yeah. Unfortunately, her parents they're not coping with that well at all. But like, there's nothing to cope for. Yeah, it was their oldest daughter. They wanted grandkids. All right, her sister has kids, so. But yeah.
Yeah, I have an uncle who's homosexual, and I love him all the same. Give him hugs when I see him, but being a child, it was never something I really picked up on per se. So.
Right. Yeah. When I was a kid, I was oblivious to it. Like I didn't even know Richard Simmons was gay. I just thought he was really happy. And I was like 20 something years old, and I saw him on an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? And like within seconds, he's gay. But all those commercials and Sweating the Oldies and stuff I saw as a kid, I just thought he was effeminate. I had no idea. But yeah, real easy to spot it once you know about it or whatever. But Lindsey Graham's from a different era, though. He's old enough to where, homosexuality was an abomination when he was younger. It was really like, oh, you sick pervert. And so it's hard for him, probably.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have a problem with it, though. They'd be like, okay, probably help him.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the younger people, they're completely cool with that. I actually didn't know that about Lindsey Graham, although it does kind of make sense.
You look at him now and be like, oh right, yeah, there it is.
Well, you don't want to stereotype, but there is a certain way that they, gay guys talk compared to straight guys, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I don't pick on it. I don't pick up on it sometimes. Like I'll have friends too.
I always thought that was odd. I tried to chase down the origin of the whole faking a lisp thing, because some people just have a lisp. Yeah, Giuliani, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, a lot of great people have a lisp. But why would all these people who don't have a lisp act like they have a lisp as a signal to be gay? Like, okay, well, if you're talking to another gay person, both of you already know you're gay. Why can't you just talk how you usually talk? And no one had a good answer for me. Even people that did it. I'm like, why do you do that? Well, it's a way of showing you're homosexual. I'm like, but he already knows that. Yeah. It's just something they do. I never understood it.
What do you think it's something you put on or no? Because I mean, I have a friend who I actually didn't know he was gay for a while, and then my female lady friend who is also into me in a way, let me know, and I was like, really?
Well, lesbians don't really do it. It's just gay guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
lispy thing. And obviously not all of them do it, but I think it's from Hollywood. I think a lot of like gay characters in shows had that that sort of flamboyant, lispy way of speaking. And they're just sort of mimicking the few role models that were around. I don't know. It's just we never really got an answer. And I asked a lot of gay people who did engage in the behavior, why do you do that? They didn't even know. So I don't know. It's a mystery.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, and like I said, I have an uncle who's gay, and I love him very much, and that's all good.
Speaking of lisp, Mike Tyson's fighting Sunday.
I see you changed your name,
Japan
Ryan.
time.
Before we were chatting.
Oh yeah, I had the great one
today. Ryan's name, he changed it to the great one as another bit of an.
Well, I was wearing the Muhammad Ali thing before. I took that off in the tie, but yeah, I watched a lot of Muhammad Ali interviews and fights this week. I was watching Tyson and Jones stuff, but stuff comes in your feed. I'm like, ooh, Ali, I want to see that fight again. And I just went on a Muhammad Ali train, even though he's not fighting. It's just really, really fascinating to watch him.
Are you still on the mat nowadays, Ryan? Or what do you?
No, the Rona.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I suppose that's the worst possible place you could be in a pandemic. If there is
that one actually makes sense. Like, okay, that would cause you to spread a disease because you're on top of each other all the time. But I don't know. I feel like get tested. If you don't have it, you can roll. I don't know, but they're not open right now, so it sucks.
Yeah,
I have a kickboxing gym downstairs. I don't want to pay for another thing though. Like, I'd love to do that. I just can't sign up for anything else.
For those that don't know, Ryan is actually a black belt master in Jiu-Jitsu, and I definitely want to roll with him one day. I've done a bit of training with Marines in Okinawa, but I'm quite the novice. But I find Jiu-Jitsu very, very fascinating, and I love watching martial arts as well. But Ryan Dawson is on ANCreport.com. I'm actually subscribing.
Yeah, I was a jiu-jitsu coach in North Carolina, and one of my students, his name is Eric McGinnis. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu now, and karate kickboxer. And so he's going. Rona hit right when he was, peak of his, entering his professional career. He's trying to get in the UFC, and all the gyms closed. It's like, okay. But I believe he is going to be doing some kickboxing matches. And he's got the coolest Irish name ever. McGinnis, right? Eric McGinnis. You can add him on Facebook. Tell him I said hello. And I just taught him the first few years, the no-gi style. And I also taught him private lessons, striking. And he went on, and now he's a black belt, and he's professional. So, and he's rolled with people in UFC, and he's been training partners with people in UFC. So I'm hoping he'll have a nice career later. And another student of mine, Stephen Hines, won the Naga Nationals in Jiu-Jitsu, as did Eric. Yeah, both of them won the Naga. And then we had a small clique down there in North Carolina, because usually the bigger teams are like Team Rock near the Triangle area. That's with the Gracies and so on. I studied under Gustavo Machado, so the Machado school, same as Eddie Bravo, and passed my torch. And so those guys are still doing it over there. I feel like it's been carried on, because I won't have maybe 10 years left. I'm already 42. So, but my sons will learn it. So.
You're still young 40s, Ryan. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I guess, we're in shape now, but you age quickly. Like when it hits. So, I said that in my 30s too. Like, I ain't going to be doing this in my 40s. And here I am doing it. But, it just seemed like not many people do. But a lot of other people drink and smoke and do bad habits. And I don't. I only drink to celebrate, like when a neocon dies or something.
Thanks for the shout out, by the way, Ryan. And I think it was your John McCain anniversary. You gave me a shout
yeah.
out.
Yeah, I plugged your B&T channel too.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Shout out to John McCain for being dead.
Yeah, every 25th of the month we have the John McCain's still dead party. It was just a couple days ago. Yeah, I'm making a calendar, and it's got funny stuff like Hate Richard Pearl Day, John McCain's still dead day, John McCain death anniversary, Ruth Bader Ginsburg anniversary death, stuff like that. Just funny stuff. And I got a lot of like American history events from the Civil War, Revolutionary War, and so on the calendar, because Americans are not learning American history anymore. They're just learning all the negative stuff, and that's it.
Yeah. I was talking to the woman who made our Thanksgiving dinner tonight, Miss Peaches, and I was saying that to her. I was like, I would love to be a teacher, but I think the best way to teach now is to be on the internet, like yourself, Ryan.
Yeah, you wouldn't get hired otherwise. You're woke or nothing, right?
Exactly.
People ask me if my brother and I would do a course on the Civil War or something, and I'm like, well, isn't that what we're doing? We're just going over different aspects of it all the time. It's not a course. It's not organized, but it's something I'd like to do. I just don't know how. I guess nowadays with people zooming into school, if we could get people to sign up, we could do something like that.
Yeah, and I love to interview your brother. I don't know if you've been doing more and more collaborations with him, I've noticed.
You should ask him about the Lost Colony. I'm sure he's sick of explaining it, but it's another audience that people need to know. And it's something he's been doing for 20 years and fighting, and he finally proved it, right? And so, yeah, you could get him on a stream about that. You could have the two of us on if you want to go over some history stuff too.
Definitely. Hopefully people don't get you guys confused.
But you should have Mr. Wilson on about what happened to him in England and living and going to prison for 11 months. And they turned his life upside down.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the guy that found the pedophile ring, and he got punished, and they didn't.
It's borderline barbaric over there, Ryan, with their justice system.
He went to jail for a Facebook post.
Yeah.
And it was nothing. He was just shooting the shit with his friend. And they just interpreted that to be a threat toward them. They went way back and like, look what he wrote right here. Like, he's not even talking about you. He didn't know who his accusers were. Like, it was insane. He said something about cheddar, which means money, slang. I don't know. And they were like, oh, that's a gun. And I'll put you in touch with both of them because there's some wild stories. And that's the problem. All the whistleblowers go to jail, whether it's Snowden or Julian Assange, and also Michael Flynn, because in the DIA, he's the one that had the correct assessment, admitting that we were supporting Al-Qaeda, and that was the U.S. official stance, right? John Kerry was all for it. John Kerry was caught on a hot mic talking to the heads of these rebels organization, the moderate rebels that cut off heads, complaining about how they couldn't get boots on the ground because everybody called in and Congress wouldn't pay for it. And that's because nobody wanted war with Syria after the war in Iraq. They saw through it. And it makes me feel good about the American public. Calling in, didn't care what TV said, because it was 100% propaganda to go get Assad and say he gassed his own people, and no one believed it. And I think right now with Biden stealing the election, like, the mass media has really lost its credibility, because the Hunter laptop came out, nobody touched it. They censored anybody that would talk about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you like Trump or don't like him or whatever. That was a story, and they decided you don't get to hear this. And that's scary. But at the same time, no one believes these election results. There's over 70-something million people who go, fraud. It's pretty clear that it was. And I think they'll be able to prove that. It doesn't matter sometimes, though, even when you have the proof. Like, we could prove Iraq didn't have WMDs. So they did it anyway. Yeah. Right? But what happened is long-term result. They couldn't start the next war because everybody knew they lied about Iraq, so nobody believed them on Syria. So one good thing that might come out of stealing the election is no one's going to have any faith in any elections anymore. It's going to lead to a breakdown of the whole system. Yeah, maybe that's a good thing.
I want to give you the floor for a sec here, right? What are your, because that's what I've been wanting to get into. It's a good segue into the election situation which we are in. right now we're in the midst of it here on Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone tuning in. But we are in a very contested election here in the United States, the most powerful seat in the world up for grabs, so to speak. And I want to ask you, Ryan, what do you
Between
think?
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Oh yeah, I mean Joe Biden. No.
How do you have an inkling of because I mean I agree with you, Ryan. I think there's 100% fraud going on, but do you think that we or the people who wish to see that this fraud come to light can provide that burden of proof? Do you think it's going to go to Biden, or do you think Trump is?
Well, it'll be state by state, and so it really depends on what happens December 3rd. On December 3rd, with Arizona and some hearings. They seem to be close in Pennsylvania because Judge Alito already chimed in and segregated the votes that came in after hours versus those that didn't. And then they just had a sort of preliminary hearing, and we did have a judge block certification of Pennsylvania's votes. So they cannot vote until after this evidence has been presented and seen. And the evidence is very strong. And it's a number of different shenanigans. Over 9,000 dead people voting. Over 30,000 votes that came in the day before they were mailed somehow, because that means they're fake. And then over 30,000 votes that came the same day they were mailed. So they mailed them and it got returned all on the same day. That's very suspicious. And then even more that happened within just one day. All those votes that came in before they were mailed, that should be thrown out. All the dead people, that needs to be thrown out. They allowed curing votes, which is just a thing they made up at the time and didn't have the power to do, but only in select counties, blue ones. So, and then there's the ratio of absentee ballots that were rejected that, usually at least 0.4% or something. And it was almost non-existent if you're in a blue county. And then the biggest thing is there were hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast without any poll watchers present. And they corralled them. They built a wall in Hall F, would not allow them to see. And then there was another thing with the highlighter scandal with a pink highlighter to say, oh, these couldn't be read. And they let election workers fill it in for them. Blank ballots being filled in by election workers with no neutral observers. So that's why you have so many tickets that just say Biden, 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 and they didn't even vote down ticket because they're just filling them in as quick as they can. Oh, Biden, 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 Biden. And the ratio of saying, oh, Biden got 797,000 votes and Trump 3,200, not possible. That's over cheating. You can cheat a little bit, but not that much. And is also like, okay, they stopped counting at night, but just in the swing states. And then the truckloads of hundreds of thousands of ballots come all for one guy, at 4:30 in the morning, and no one's allowed to see it except one side. Everyone else. And there you go. Oh yeah, these are all for Biden. You're not allowed to see them though. And we stopped counting. And if you're going to make the argument that, well, more Democrats mail in their ballot because of COVID or whatever. Okay. But not in Florida or Ohio or Iowa or any other state, just these swing states and just these cities in these swing states. Other cities in the same state didn't behave that way. But you're going to say in Philadelphia and Detroit and these key cities in these key states suddenly got hundreds of thousands of Biden-only votes. But not in the adjacent states, not even in super blue states did that happen, or red. Just the swing states, after hours with no one watching. It's fraud. And I believe that circumstantial evidence is enough right there. And then you have eyewitnesses. I wasn't allowed to observe. We got footage in Delaware, Pennsylvania, where they're sitting there coloring in Biden, right? So the evidence is there. The problem is, do we have an honest court system or not? Right?
That's the question.
So
really,
that's the big question. Is like, well, will they look at this evidence and decide? And I think if they're not retarded, they're gonna have to side with Trump, because if you have all this evidence of fraud and the public gets to see it too, because Giuliani them are gonna show the public, and you just go, nah, whatever, Biden anyway, then you've pissed off 74 million Republicans. You could have truckers' strikes. You could have boycotts. You could have violence. They won't accept it, because if it gets to the point where, like, we cheated, everyone knows you cheated, and the system's just like, so what are you going to do about it? Well, you leave people only one choice, which is violence.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they'd get. And the Republicans haven't been violent yet. Just the left has. The no testosterone side. You don't know how bad it would be if you get that redneck off the couch, because you don't know what violence is until you rattle the red again.
Yeah.
It'd be this all over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got a lot more people this time.
Is that a General Lee biography you got there?
This was a great book on General Lee by Stanley Horn. It's a thick one, but
we'll have another
one of the more fair accounts. Yeah, on the man. It goes over the whole history. I mean, Robert E. Lee, people have to remember, is a veteran of the United States Army. He helped win the Mexican War.
Yeah,
his father,
West Point grad,
top of the class, and his father had been a congressman in Virginia. He had been governor
to get perfect merit or no demerits throughout.
Yeah, yeah, he was amazing. Then he really turned around Washington Lee College after the war, got all the recruitment, helped. He's just an American hero. His whole family was like that, though. Light Horse Henry Lee in the Revolutionary War, and then serving his country afterward in politics, and then going all the way back to Lionel Lee, whose armor is in the Tower of London, right next to Marmaduke Dawson, by the way, on the raids in England. So he's been sticking it to them for a long time.
Is that an ascendant of yours?
The Dawson is, Lee isn't, but they've been fighting side by side from the 1000s to the 1800s. And some of Lee's property, our family owns it in Featherstone, Virginia. You know what happened? They went after Lee, and Arlington Cemetery was his old property. Now it's the house that houses all the veterans that have passed on. But they were trying to steal his properties, and our family bought property from the Lees so that the Yankees or the government couldn't take it. And it's still in. I won't say her name, but it's under one of the Dawsons, and Featherstone is still sitting on it, and you can see right across the Potomac all the way to Maryland.
Oh wow, excellent! I was just on the Potomac a few weeks ago with George Webb, and hopefully George joins us. If you're listening, George, you're welcome to join.
You know what I'd like to do when I'm older or able? I'd want to take people around Virginia and show them the battle sites and give them the real story and stuff.
Oh, I'd love to do that with you, Ryan. I don't know if you'd be allowed to come back into the United States anytime soon.
But there's just about everywhere in Virginia there was a fight, right?
Yeah, Virginia,
Fredericksburg, and all. It's just that's where half the war was fought, all of Virginia. Yeah. And I'd love to do that and give them the proper version of events too. But
I still haven't even been to Gettysburg, Ryan, and I remember reading about it. I was staying with a family member in the hospital a couple
I've been there. Ago. I was well received there. They the people that live there know, because that was a 3-day battle. The South won the first day, the draw the second day, and the Union won on the third day. They also had Gatling guns. That probably helped. But the people in Gettysburg understand the real history, and you can see Confederate flags in Gettysburg. They honor both sides. It's people not involved that lose their mind about it. People in Oregon or California or whatever, they don't know anything about anything, and they get so mad. They're like, have you been to the South? The flag is everywhere. It's a Southern symbol. It's not a hate symbol. Nowadays, they're taking them down, but not me. I got one up on my window right now, and I got a restaurant that put it in their restaurant too, because it's like a Texas-themed one. It's like, yeah, throw it in there. In Japan. Representing. Yeah. Not my restaurant. I was just like, they had a Texas flag. I was like, you should have the stars and bars. So they put it up there. You know, the Japanese, they're like, what? They were fighting for independence. I mean, how could you, like, did West Virginia secede from Virginia? Yeah. Oh, so you can secede. Gotcha. Did we not secede from the United Kingdom? Yeah. Were there not secession movements prior to the Civil War? Yeah. Okay, then. I mean, you could go all the way back to the Whiskey Rebellion. That one of the reasons they didn't really press on it, they only kind of attacked the people in Pennsylvania and not Kentucky, was because Kentucky was a brand new state and they were afraid of secession. But the Whiskey Rebellion was not just about a tax on whiskey. This is where everybody gets this wrong. It was more than a luxury tax like Hamilton thought it was. People out in the mountains were using whiskey bottles as currency because it was so hard to bring their goods by wagon. They didn't have the roads and stuff like now. And they were using whiskey as a form of currency. So you're taxing their currency. Like no one even drank it or whatever, just had it as collateral. You're not going to be going around with gold and stuff. And so that's what it was more than that.
Man, they love their whiskey.
Yeah, well, it was hilarious. Is one of the biggest distiller of whiskey for a time in the United States was George Washington. And he was the guy that was sent with the army to go suppress the Whiskey Rebellion. So he just arrests like 12 people, only 2 of them, he let them all go. And then he pardoned the rest of them when he became president. So it's like he was unenthusiastically enforcing that one. And as soon as Jefferson became president, he got rid of the whiskey tax. So he got rid of all of Hamilton stuff. They hated each other. Good on Jefferson.
And
Jefferson didn't like whiskey so much, though, but he loved wine. He was a wine connoisseur. Ben Franklin and Jefferson were into the wine. Okay. He said, "I'll have 3 or 4 glasses at dinner. That's all, but I do enjoy my 3 or 4 glasses."
It makes me think of Hamilton, just tying it into Epstein, because Hamilton was getting shook down by the husband of the wife who he was sleeping with.
Yeah, well, Hamilton was a Rothschild agent too.
Sexual blackmail runs deep within our country.
And you know what else? Hamilton was born in the Caribbean.
Oh, he was? Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why he couldn't be president. He wasn't born in the U.S. He's from the Caribbean, and
it's a shame. It's a shame.
No, fuck that guy. He was Secretary of State. He did enough damage with protective tariffs. Well, he didn't have. Henry Clay's the one that finally got protective tariffs in, but Hamilton
Secretary of State,
argued for it.
Right?
Yeah, but Hamilton was the Secretary of Treasury, and then Clay ended up in the Congress arguing for protective tariffs, and they shot it down in the 1820s, 1820 exactly. Every southern state voted against it. By 1824, though, they got it passed, and 47 out of 48 representatives from the South voted against it. The only one to vote for it was Tennessee. Because Tennessee's not really affected by exports. They're not on the water. But everyone else that had a river, or like the Mississippi or coastline, definitely voted against it, and they just did it anyway. And that would end up leading to the Civil War. I mean, it led to South Carolina secession. They tried nullification first, the story of John Calhoun and all that. But Henry Clay is the man to blame, and then he's with the 3/5 compromise guy too. Lincoln comes in as an advocate of Henry Clay. Here comes this long-legged ape that they just gotten over the protective tariffs, and here he just comes picking scabs and brings it back again. And they seceded because they'd already had it jacked up to 50%, and they're like, okay, we're leaving. And then they compromise. They go, no, we'll start lowering it every year. Every 2 years, we'll lower it back down. But they only lowered it to the 33%. And the price of cotton went from 21 cents a pound to 8.8 cents a pound. So almost 9 cents from 21 cents because of these tariffs. They knew that it would cripple them, and they're spending all the taxes in the North. That's why part of the reason the North was able to win the Civil War is they had all the railroads for supply lines, and the South didn't. The reason the South didn't have so many rails is because they were government subsidized, and it all got spent on Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. But guess who's paying all the taxes? The South. 87% of the taxes came from the South, and the rest is mostly New England.
It reminds me of our current situation, Ryan, in many ways.
A little bit. We have uniform taxes now because of the Civil War, but the way that taxes are spent, definitely the federal government has its favorites. And some state, and even within the same state, in North Carolina, it's spent on like Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. It's not going to the eastern part of the state or the western part of the state. We all get taxed, but they spend it on whatever, a new stadium or something. It's not going to protect the beaches from erosion. It's not going to things that ought to be going to. And that's a third of the tourism in North Carolina is the Outer Banks. But they don't take care of them.
Ryan, I wanted to bring this up because, I've been wanting to talk to you ever since we chatted on the 4th, and you testified for Cape Hatteras, I know, and I saw that video. Actually, Ryan,
several times.
I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if you noticed, Ryan. It's actually been getting a bit of traction. The views have been going up on that video.
Yeah, that's weird. Like that old video, suddenly the algorithm put it out or whatever. But
can you speak on that?
That was back in
home turf.
What was that? 2009, 10, something like that. It's like 10 years ago. Yeah, I stuck it to them. The county commissioners. I went to the National Park Service. When I was in America, I do what I say. Like, how I'm always like, don't go yell at buildings, go in the building and talk. That's what I did. I brought folders of information. I went through all the law. I went through decades of it, the whole National Park Service and the history and what they had done. And I let them have it. But what you haven't seen, and it is on the internet somewhere, I'm wearing a red shirt. That white shirt I was wearing had a picture of the beach with cars that spelled "Please help us." It was too small to see in the video, but that's what I was wearing in there. But I'm wearing this red shirt, and I had my whole jiu-jitsu crew in the crowd behind me. And
security crew.
Yeah, Mike Shitface, who was the director of national parks at the time, was on the stage with police and stuff because he didn't feel safe. And that was the best speech ever. It was also a standing ovation, but it was just, they let you have a certain amount of time, but you had to have however long. Your time didn't start till after you said your name. So I said, "My name is," and had this long diatribe, from, and it was like, and I acted like that was what my name was. And then I started on the rest of it. Playing Shylock with their own rules, and they cut the transcription and the filming. I was like, that's all right. I got my own cameraman right there. And no one cares if I go over time. And people are allocating me their time. They're like, we can't do that. I'm like, well, this is Buxton. You ain't in Nag's Head right now, and we're going to do what we're going to do. And everyone's like, because I was like, there's no way I'm getting off this microphone. Come get it.
Yeah.
And because these people, they ruin their lives. They shut down the beach on an island and act like that's not going to hurt the economy.
Yeah.
I don't even have to explain anything about the local politics. It's an island. They closed the beach. What do you think happened to the economy? Duh. Can you imagine what would happen in Hawaii if you couldn't go to the beach?
Yeah.
No, nobody would go to Hawaii. Oh, you're going to Hawaii? Why? Well, you can't go to the beach, though. They're not going to go.
How did that end up, Ryan? Because I just saw the video and
so all it was is 5 of the 6 county commissioners live north of the bridge, and they didn't close the beach north of the bridge, just south of the bridge. So what it was is using an environmental BS pretext to shut down all the beaches on our island and the island below us to force all that tourism up north. That was the real deal. And they used the Park Service to do it. The Park Service was supposed to provide a plan a long time ago of beach access. Well, you don't need a plan. It's easy. You drive to the beach. No one has to teach you. There's little rampways the Park Service built out of wood, and you get on the sand, you click it in the 4-wheel drive, and because it's really far from the beach, is really long, half a mile in some places, and then you drive to the beach because you can't walk that in hot sand. And then other parts of the beach, you don't need a car. You can just walk there because it's really narrow. But on the south side of the beach, where it's really long, where people will go fishing and so on, they drive out to the point, or what used to be called, go fishing, do all your recreational things. And that's what you're supposed to be doing. It's a recreational park. That's why it's called Parks and Rec. Rec is for recreation. This is not a environmental preserve. It's not a bird sanctuary or anything. We have those, and those are for birds, and this is for people. So they took what's supposed to be for people and closed it down, saying that people being in the park harm the bird population. And my argument is it doesn't matter because it's a park. And birds don't have to be in the park or not. And it didn't hurt the bird population anyway.
Speaking of birds, Brian, that's my mockingbird alert.
Yeah.
Operation Mockingbird.
The plover population that they were used, they did the same thing in Sandhook, New Jersey, by the way. Same pretext. And it's just about moving tourists around for money interest. But the Park Service comes down, they close the beach, and they start shooting all the predators that could possibly kill a bird, which is everything. And so they completely wiped out the fox population. Like we used to have fox on the island, now we don't. They're killing raccoons, geese, ghost crabs, like whatever. They're out there murdering animals. And guess what happened to the bird population? Went down.
Yeah.
Because the presence of people in the park is what kept all the predators out anyway. And you can't just go around and kill all of them. And a lot of these birds, they're on the roof of the food line. They're not even nesting less where people are, just like pigeons. And so then they weren't counting those. It was so stupid. You're only talking about like 10 pair anyway. It's ridiculous. So, we're just going to shut down a tourist spot for millions of people over 10 nesting pairs of a bird that's not even extinct that lives right over there anyway and in the town. It was just an excuse. Yeah. And they wanted to act like, and these guys, they're anti-human. These are not good environmentalists. These are the normal, the weird tree hugger, militantly anti-human, don't have babies, Earth's gonna, we're overpopulating, and those people. And they're the ones that shut down the wind farms too, because they thought it might hit a bird or a bat. And this was the Audubon Society, and they just so happened to get $5 million donations from Toyota and Ford car companies. They work together, but that's what they do. They find, this is in my book that you left, but when you read the chapter on the environment,
I'm gonna buy a new one, Ryan.
The government always uses some do-gooder facade, right? Like, oh, this is for education, this is for the environment, this is for some almost impossible to oppose cause, right? Oh, this is fighting racism or whatever. And yet it's not. Like the Patriot Act, nice name, not what it does though. And under the guise of education or the environment or some do-gooder label, it's just fuckery. And you don't have to peel back the thinnest layer and see what they're really doing, right? There's an education referendum in Virginia, and it was like $64 million. Had nothing to do with education. It wasn't like landscaping projects on colleges. So it was just like construction for the sake of it, because it cost a lot. And it didn't do anything to improve education. But they figured, oh, well, as long as we're doing construction on schools, tear this down and build it up again, made it uglier than it was. Well, that's school. So education, right? No, not right. They tore up William & Mary. It was a beautiful campus. They knocked down the redwood trees. Here's a fun story. The College of William & Mary, in their charter, one of the people that sponsored it was Francis Boyle, the scientist, like Boyle's Law. And he had wanted to come over to the New World to study the flora and fauna, and he never did. And they never held up their end of the promise. They just took his money and F you. So later they tried to remedy that, and they took every type of tree from North America, not every species, but every family, whatever, and including redwood trees, palm trees. The northernmost palm tree in the United States is in Virginia. It's next to the heating ducts of the Tucker building, which is the English building at William & Mary. That heat from the air conditioning units and stuff keep it alive, whatever. And there are even a couple redwoods. And it's not easy to keep a redwood alive in Virginia because they ain't supposed to be there, but they had a special way of doing it. So you could see any kind of tree on that campus. that would not be in Virginia otherwise. They had all of them, including a palm tree. Well, they tore that down, not knowing the history or anything with Boyle or why we were doing that. And because it was part of the education referendum for landscaping and stuff. And they put up this gaudy, ugly, stupid scribble statue on the Barrett yard. Barrett, by the way, is where the girls' dormitory was, and it had been donated there for female athletics and feminists. So they had a girls' dorm, and they were supposed to have a field hockey place and stuff. Like, the woman that gave the money wanted it for female athletics. You know what they did? It's now co-ed, no longer for women, and they scrapped women's athletics, and they put some stupid metal statue that just looks like monkey bars all scribbled up, which affected people's Wi-Fi and stuff. It was so bad and so ugly. But they just pay some artist to do it because it's a way of laundering money. Everyone knows this. It's just god awful what they did.
Paying artists, like statue artists?
Yeah, art is a really easy way to launder money. Like, if you're not officially allowed to put somebody on the payroll, you just pay for their art. And their art can be crap.
That's what they do in Maryland, Ryan, for herb. Or if you want to pay for herb, you just pay someone for their art.
Right.
Year.
Yeah, you can't. Well, that's one way, I guess, but
because you
can't really judge art. Like, how do you know? And just, whatever, it's art to somebody. It's like, there's a statue of James Blair, who was a prick, but he's part of history, so leave it. You know, I'm like, hey, he needs to be there. That's part of the story, even the bad part. I'm okay with the James Blair statue. It looks like James Blair. It's a good statue from an artistic point of view.
I don't know who Ryan. After I'm done, just explain who James Blair is. I don't know who he is, but
he's just a holy roller. He captured Indians, and he's a dick. But you know, he's part of the school's history.
Before you go on, you know, the statues, they don't have to be out in the streets, but I think we should at least, you know,
this is on the campus next to where he's part of the school.
Well, just put them in museums is my point. Just put them in museums. You don't have to smash them or put them in rivers, you know.
Well, they went into museums and smashed them too. They went into the Daughters of Confederate Veterans and burned the flag of Stonewall Jackson. That is now no longer with us. They burned it last year. I'm okay with having it in park. It's just your property. You can do it. It's your school. You can do it too. Thomas Jefferson's there because he went to school there. There's a small statue of Thomas Jefferson, and there's another one in Colonial Williamsburg of Jefferson on a bench, so you can sit next to him and take your picture with Thomas Jefferson. They're like, well, if you don't like Thomas Jefferson, then don't sit next to him. But other people do, and they want a statue. You know, it's like, it ain't yours. Don't touch it. That's my thing. There's a statue of Lincoln. I don't particularly like him, but I'm not going to go do anything to it, you know, because other people like him because they don't know about him. Yeah. I think if you fell for the storybook version of Lincoln as the great emancipator and all, he'd be a great person to have a statue for. Turns out not to be the case, but he's still a definite prominent historical figure, and he deserves a monument. And then I can ask Ryan, right under it and say what he really did.
You know? I know you're very critical of Mr. Lincoln. Who do you think our best president is? Who do you say our best president is?
Probably Jefferson or Washington. It's hard to say. Some of them had better cabinets than others, but Louisiana Purchase, he wrote the Bill of Rights, so the guy was just stellar. You know, had a boom, killed the first central bank. He was a good one. We had Calvin Coolidge was a good president. Madison too. It's, you know, the early ones were the best. We haven't had a great president in a while. Ronald Reagan was a good president. I wouldn't call him a great president, but he did what he said. Even Donald Trump, he did what he said. Maybe you don't like what he said, but he kept his promises. He's no Thomas Jefferson though. But they've just been so bad in my lifetime that you look at the past, like the glory days.
You're because, like that, right?
They're not. We don't put America first anymore. It's all Israel policy, and it has been since they killed Kennedy. That's pretty terrible. I mean, Garfield seemed like he was gonna be a good president, but they killed him.
Since we spoke last,
JFK was going to be a good president, not a great one, but a good one. They killed him too.
Yeah. he definitely, he got his, of course, rep boosted by being assassinated. It's like
but he lowered taxes. He increased the revenue, but
Mm.
not the rate, because they figured you lower taxes, they'll actually stay in the United States. And yeah, Vietnam was a dumb move, but he may have been going to reverse that. No one will ever know because he died. Well, he was murdered. But a lot to handle. The civil rights movement was just getting going. A lot of things on his plate.
Since we spoke last, Ryan, I've actually been digging into the infamous Dulles brothers.
Oh yes, two Zionists,
as well as Mr. Gottlieb. Probably the three most powerful men in the Western world for a couple of years there.
And James Jesus Angleton.
Yes, James Angleton as well, CIA director and
director of counterintelligence. Yeah,
and that's actually Mr. Strzok's role, or was Mr. Strzok's role, Peter Strzok, who George and I, especially George, is deep into Peter Strzok. As well, so he's one of the chiefs there, or was one of the chiefs there over there at counter espionage. But who, since we did mention Peter Strzok, I would like to touch on the Dulles as well. Who do you think is behind this election sting? Is it same characters as 2016, or what are you thinking, Ryan?
Clinton. You think Clinton Mafia?
Hillary?
Same as 2016.
Yeah,
they have the most infrastructure. Like Biden, Kerry, and Clinton are a clique already. And that's and who were the two secretaries of state under Obama Biden? Clinton and Kerry. Exactly.
Yep.
That's the clique. You'd have to involve local Philly mob, though.
Philly mob?
You have to. In Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, because that's the swing state they needed. And the ones with the biggest ties to the Philly mob are the Kerrys. Because, they already had the same board as Whitey Bulger's nephew, right? And I don't know if you know the story with John Kerry, his family, and the Boston Mafia, Whitey Bulger, but they're like this.
I do know, Ryan, about of course, Whitey Bulger, infamous criminal.
He is now, because there was a movie about him, but the movie's whatever.
Black Mass.
I never saw the movie, but other people told me, they're like, it's like half true.
You know what other movie, Ryan, is based on Whitey Bulger? One of my top three for me is
The Irishman or something?
The Departed, Martin Scorsese.
Oh, The Departed, yeah. That's a good movie.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic
movie. Great movie.
Yeah. And his brother, which I know you know, Ryan, I'm just letting our audience know.
It's a better movie if you know the real mob stuff behind it. You go, oh, I got it.
Was the politician. So you had two brothers, similar to the Dulleses in a way, just in the fact they were brothers. But you got Whitey Bulger, the gangster.
His brother's the senator.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
then John Kerry becomes the federal senator.
Yeah, can you tie that into the Kerrys, Ryan, for us? Because I actually don't know the details on that.
I'll not now. I getting ready to go, but just look into that. It's not hard to find. That's the weirdest thing. It's right in your face, and it doesn't matter. But they're deeply tied to the mob. Trump too. He had to work with the mob in New York. If you're a real estate developer in New York, you just have to. But he never. And I know if you could talk to Michael Francine and Johnny A-Light, whoever, any of these mobsters that have come through and they're talking to schools and stuff now, they're like, Trump never participated with us. He knew Salerno, Fat Tony, but that was just like the minimal. You did what you had to do if you want to develop anything there. But no meetings, no money. I know he knew Bob LaBooty. He gave him a helicopter. He's sleazy, but not to the level of Kerry or Biden. John Kerry's family is deep in those pockets, let's just say. And then the Clinton, we used to have the term Arkancide. Now we say suicided or Clinton.
Yeah,
but it used to be called Arkancide from that Arkansas Mafia.
Yeah. Well, fantastic, Ryan.
The Arkansas Mafia and the New Orleans Mafia is the same mafia. Really, same people. That started with O.K. Allen back in the day. He was the governor, and a lot of the cell, that Guy Bannister and Clay Shaw and Oswald were there in New Orleans. you're really answering to the Michello brothers, Carlos Marcello and Joe. They were running territory in Dallas too. And they had that from the Carousel Club all the way down to Tampa Bay, which was Traficante territory at that time. These network of girls dancing all these clubs, including Jack Rubenstein, who got sent down from Chicago, and he had that club in Dallas. He knew all the police. There's a honey trap operation going there. All the girls, all the cops. He knew 75% of the people in the Dallas payroll, including Bill Decker. And David Ferry wasn't into the girl scene, being homosexual, but he was in the Civil Air Patrol with Oswald. And anyway, look into Ted Shackley and Angleton and what was going on between New Orleans and Miami, and you'll see the direct line back right up to the same characters, Lansky and Costello, right? Blackmailing Hoover. But you'll see the same thread of money, and it always goes back to the clique of Swiss bankers, all of whom are a certain ethnic group, beholden to the interests of Israel. And this is why Kennedy was killed, because he was going to inspect their nukes. That's why both Kennedys were killed. But they outsourced the mob to do it. And Robert too, yeah. I mean, Alessio had Thane Eugene Sousa shoot him in the head. So he did. And with Jack Kennedy, I don't want to give the answer away because I'm making a film, but there was more than one shooter, and it was planned, and a lot of people knew. And I feel like if the internet had been around then, it would have been debunked in an hour. But what makes JFK research so hard is all the BS about it. I think the same thing about 9/11. If I had not been alive when it happened and trying to figure it out as it was going, it would have been impossible, because there's so much BS about 9/11 right now that you couldn't unravel it all unless people had already done it who were alive when it happened. Wow. And so that's kind of how I figured out what happened to Kennedy, is looking at a lot of the researchers that were following it as it was going before all the nonsense hit real hard, right? If you think about the term grassy knoll, who the hell says knoll? Nobody. CIA did that as a way of seeing how far their propaganda spread.
That's a good point.
You look at these weird words. I used to have a list, the example, like modern stuff in the media, where they have these weird phrases, and you hear everybody saying them back to you again. I'm like, those aren't your own words. You got that straight off of TV.
Yeah,
I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but I'll think of them later. But there are certain catchphrases they do.
Yeah, it's similar, and the CIA is good at this. It's
too big to fail was one of their little things, right? That went around everywhere. It's too big to fail. That was what they were talking about for the Wall Street bailouts, and that was just the mantra. Just too big to fail. Oh, that's too big to fail. We had to do something. They're too big to fail. They all say it at the same time, and it just gets ingrained into the U.S. conscience, right? Like this is what we believe. TV said so.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Ryan, because I love chatting with you, and I know my subscribers, they get so excited when you and I chat, and I hope I don't have to wait until Christmas until we talk again, because we got the 4th of July chat, and now we got the Thanksgiving chat on. So, well,
that is the next major holiday, and that will also be the same day as John McCain's Still Dead Day, because every 25th. one of your guaranteed Christmas present is John McCain is still in hell.
Well, I would love to chat with you on that day, Ryan, but hopefully we can chat before.
What holiday? Is there another holiday between Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Hanukkah.
Is that earlier this year? Yeah, I'll do it on Hanukkah or Kwanzaa.
I do want to get you and George chatting though, and he probably fell asleep. He wakes up pretty early, but I want to get you and George Webb chatting about the I word at some point before then, Ryan.
I word, the blueberries. Isn't real. You're talking about isn't real? Did you see him flip a tank the other day?
Yeah, I saw that.
It's like foreshadowing Pennsylvania flipping red.
Yeah, and for those that didn't see it, there's I don't know if he was an NCO or an E1 or what he was, but he tried driving a tank up on
Blind,
Unflip
probably.
LC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was. Or
he,
drunk.
he flipped it like Wayne County flipped at 3:45 a.m. on the 4th of November.
He flipped that hard, and that was unflippable back. They just the oil was coming out, and and they're all just running around. What do we do?
I'm so glad I saw that before your video because I was actually watching that earlier today, and it was the first thing you covered. I was
There's
like, oh, I
footage
already
from
saw
other
this.
angles now. There's another angle of it.
Oh, there is. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Why not show them all? I might just throw it in randomly in another video, just to be like, remember this day.
So, is there anything you want to plug, Ryan, before we sign off on this Thanksgiving 2020?
Oh, well, add my bit shoot. You can see another video of the Israelis gassing themselves. They tried to shoot a tear gas canister out of a Jeep, and it went backwards, and they gassed themselves. But yeah, just add my bit shoot and come to ancreport.com and become a member, because we don't have Patreon anymore. We don't have PayPal anymore. And I really need your support so we can make these cool Civil War videos and cover Epstein, September 11th, any other historical event, the election, and so on. It all comes from you guys. So I know you hear people say, add this, and that. But look, I really need that because I was doing fine, and they took my Patreon away. And they took my PayPal away twice.
A lot, yeah.
They banned my wife from PayPal too. It's hard to make it without that. And I can't have ads, and I don't have Google AdSense. They took that away as well. So you got to sign up on the website or nothing. Or donate, I guess, in a live stream, I suppose. But if you become a member, you get a lot of goodies. So ancreport.com. It's only $5 a month. It's like an expensive cup of coffee for the whole month, which you should drink out of these mugs. Now, I am a capitalist. Yeah, check out the site, and I'll probably mirror this one later if if that's all right with you.
Of course, Ryan. Of course, you are the man.
I'll plug the original as well.
I'll send you.
I'm on Parler.
Right,
you use Parler? Parlay?
I do have one. I don't post on it though, Ryan.
It's like Twitter, but less sensory, and fewer weirdos. So yeah. I like it. I've added like Ron Paul, Sargon of Akkad. I've got a wide range of views on there, but the algorithm seems to be better. Far less shit libs. And I'm not worried, like, if I say something that hurts somebody's feels, I'm going to get censored over nothing. So, yeah, we'll see if they're as bad. But as for now, I don't think they're going to censor because that's the main reason people are going over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Donald Trump needs a Parler account. I think he get millions right away.
I agree, sir. I think our president does need one. And Corn Pop's Revenge is a documentary film that Ryan made, and I'd highly suggest people check that out. It's
only like 28 minutes or something, and I'm actually going to add to it because the bit about Biden taking in $3.7 million at a cancer charity after his son died of brain cancer, and then they didn't spend any of the money on cancer. They just pocketed it for salaries. That's how low can you, Joe?
It's like the WHO, spending all their money on travel expenses.
Yeah. You expect the bigger government is, the more it wastes. So you got to get the book, man. I mean, you got to read it. I know you got it, but get somebody to mail it to you or get another one.
I'm going to buy another one, Ryan, and I want to get you talking to Kirsten, Ryan, because I know I think that would be great exposure for you. She's a fantastic interviewer, great personality. And I know
bite.
What's that?
See that on my arm?
Yeah, well, what happened?
I'll tell you off air.
Okay. Some Addy Ads privileges there, but please check out Ryan's bitch shoot, and please subscribe on YouTube as well. He is being shadow banned, likewise with myself, but regardless, he's at 80K. Am I? I think you're getting close, Ryan. I don't know if
79 point something, but it's been like that for months. They just will not let it rise.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, add my YouTube so I can get across that barrier.
Yeah, my subscribers, head over to Ryan's channel. Please give him a sub. Let's try to get him over 80K. And I would love to chat with Kirsten next week if we can do that. And again, Corn Pop's Revenge on our supposed president-elect, but if you follow Ryan,
You know what?
on
If you want to go over Corn Pop's Revenge in a stream, we can do that.
what do you mean by that?
If you just want to, if you want to like just talk about the stuff that's in Corn Pop's Revenge, like talk about Biden for a bit, we can go over all that stuff.
Like next week or something?
Yeah, or just put it on your channel. I'm fine. I okay it. Just say this is from Ryan Dawson, Corn Pop's Revenge, and link the original. We're all good. As long as you don't Whitney Webb it, I'm all right. I want people to know that information. That one's hard to steal because I'm in it so much, and that was on purpose.
I have no comment to make on that. Although I've heard multiple people make the same complaints about the person.
You just ripped off all my 9/11 stuff. Act like I did this. He didn't.
I don't like when people plagiarize my colleagues. Let's put it that way.
It's just a shitty thing to do. Just what's wrong with saying so and so? I got this from so and so. What's so hard about that? I don't know. It's like I want to share the info. Okay, do it. But why are you acting like it's yours? Whatever. I mean, I gotta bounce. Good talking to you as always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it. Ryan Dawson of ANC Report. Thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. We'll check in next week about Corn Pop's Revenge, which I would encourage people to check out. This has been an episode of the Epstein Files. Before we sign off, Ryan, can we get a last thought on Mr. Epstein and Ms. Maxwell for the future? Just something for people to chew on before we chat again.
Well, he's not going to get away with it. And I actually told a funny Epstein-Trump story on the Libertarian Institute the other day. We were doing a Civil War talk, but near the end, I gave a little tidbit about some of the things that Epstein had been saying to his cellmate right before he died. And there's some juicy stories. And when you're in jail and you're screwed and you got no reason to lie, that's where the most honest he'd ever been, probably. And so he had some funny stories there. But what he did will not go unpunished. Like, he's already dead. She's in jail. Weinstein's in jail. It is not impossible to prosecute these people. This is the most vulnerable they've ever been. But it all goes away if Biden becomes president.
We have to strike while the iron is hot.
Yep. Hit them while they're down.
Thanks to my big bro Ryan, my native brother. He's I consider him a mentor in this space. Somebody I definitely learned from. This has been a special episode of the Epstein Files, and I thank everybody for joining us tonight on this Thanksgiving 2020 crazy year we have had so far. But regardless of faith, regardless of what you believe in, I think it's a great. It's never a bad time to find something to be thankful for. And tonight, I'm thankful for the wonderful dinner I had from Miss Peaches and the hospitality from my friend Wes, and of course, Mr. Ryan Dawson of ANC Report for giving us his time today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you guys want to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'm doing this at the behest of my own free will, but I am supported by a couple sponsors, which are very, very helpful to my endeavor. If you want to be a sponsor of mine, the least you can do is subscribe. Otherwise, you can give a Patreon link. You can do as little as $12 a year. That's $1 a month. Otherwise, you can do just a one-time donation as well. A one-time sponsorship if you like on PayPal. This has been Addy Ads for the Addy Ads channel, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. I'm an interviewer from the Midwest and public intelligence agent for not only Addy Ads, but Neighborhood News Studio as well, a la Aaron Adler, George Webb, Andy, and the rest, Dave, Detroit Dave as well. I want to give a shout out to. So until next time, folks, stay frosty, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your Thanksgiving. We got about 30 seconds left before it's the 25th. Have a great night, folks.